This is Legends and Libations.
Sipping through history.
Let the journey begin.
Welcome back to Legends and Libations. This is season 2. How are we doing, Jesse?
Feeling great to be back. It's feels like it's been a hot second.
I think so.
It's been like 3 weeks or something.
I think it's been closer to like 6 weeks.
Oh God,
since we recorded.
Oh my God.
The time flies though when it's supposed to be a break, but it's really the holidays and you have like tons of obligations and you really don't get to slow down at all.
Not at all. But I'm glad to be back at this. Happy season 2.
Yes, happy season 2. Never thought we'd be here.
Yeah,
but
and we're doing this for you guys because, well, it's selfish. Actually, we like it too because we get to like nerd out about these, like
talk about these things that we enjoy
that are super badass. Mm-hmm. But also, we do it for you guys because we love you guys and we want you guys to have all the knowledge and to win trivia every single time.
Not that you should be using our podcast as a source for trivia a lot of the time.
Yeah.
We are notoriously not fact checked nor peer reviewed.
I am pretty happy about our last video where you told them where we were wrong, Iceland ordeal and whatnot. That will be a continued path because sometimes we say things because
we start a sentence and we don't know where it's going,
and we're under the influence sometimes.
Yes,
so it's like, you know, we're not driving, but we are podcasting under the influence. Mm-hmm. So today's a cool subject.
Yes, if you can't tell by the winter attire that we have on, that might be a clue as to what we are discussing today. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that we bit off a little more than we can chew.
My God, with
this one, because
part of the 6 weeks that it has taken has
been research. And
goodness,
I'm going to go ahead and out on a limb and say that we are never going to do an entire continent in one episode
ever again.
But if there was a continent that you could do an episode on, then
it would be Antarctica.
It would be Antarctica.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Antarctica. What did you think of Antarctica before you began research?
Well, first of all, Antarctica is one of those words that's really hard for me to spell because you have to get that C in there.
Yeah.
And it always wants to go to Arctic first. And then it wants to type Arctic Monkeys because it's one of my favorite bands. But how many times are we going to say Arctic on accident when we mean Antarctica in this episode?
Literally, for the drink for this, I was looking at the Einstock Arctic Pale Ale, and then I dawned on me, Arctic and Antarctica are different. I was like, I feel really stupid. I should have known that.
Well, and it's referred to as the Antarctic. Yeah. Is like the pole or the latitude region, but then Antarctica is the continent.
Yeah.
All the layers of confusing. Yes, exactly.
Task.
I would be watching videos for this, and then I would be halfway through the video and realize that it was talking about the Arctic and the North Pole, and I would just like discount all that. Okay,
everything there was just fake. So yeah, very briefly, you know.
Well, what did you know about Antarctica, Jesse, before we started this research endeavor?
Literally, I wasn't even positive of its name. Apparently.
Me neither.
You know, I don't think I knew. All I knew is there's a big sheet of ice way south,
and that it's really cold, and people don't often live there.
Yeah. In fact, I thought no one ever went there. I was a little wrong about that because it's not like people naturally live there, but people live there now.
From what I read, it's about 5,000 people during the summer months, and then during the winter, it goes all the way down to about 1,000 roughly.
Yeah.
And this is across the whole continent. Like, we're going to go ahead and get like a little bit of the basic information out of the way, stuff that we didn't know ahead of time. But Antarctica is actually the 5th largest continent. It's bigger than Europe and it's bigger than Australia.
That's crazy. But how much of that is just ice? Because there is actually a continent there, right?
Right. So yes. So there's an ice sheet that is on the continental Antarctica that is a mile thick in most places, and it gets up to, I think it's 2.7 miles at the thickest point. And that's crazy to imagine 2.7 miles of like solid ice.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's just a lot of ice.
Yeah, 98% of the surface of Antarctica is covered by this ice sheet, and it locks up 70% of the Earth's fresh water is in the ice.
That's where all the fresh water is.
Right, exactly. To put it in perspective, if all the ice melted in Antarctica, it would raise the sea levels by 200 feet. So that would just be like coastal cities gone everywhere, pretty much. 200 feet is massive.
Yeah, like goodness.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot.
I'm not sure how high we are here, where we are currently, but they talk about just like a few feet sea level rise would be enough to get rid of cities like New Orleans and Miami and stuff like that. So imagine 200 feet would be catastrophic.
Like Florida would disappear.
Yeah, probably so.
Like the whole peninsula gone.
That would be crazy. I don't think there was much risk of it all melting at one time, but
you ever watch that movie Waterworld?
You know, I've always wanted to watch that, and I've never seen it. It's got Kevin Costner in it, though.
Yeah. I feel like that's what it would happen. We go into Waterworld, like where everyone would just have to like live on. Oh,
they live underwater?
They live on top of the water.
On top of the water.
They have villages on top of the water and everything.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. It's been like over 20 years since I've watched it.
Something about the sea always draws me to it. Like, I'm always fascinated by living on the ocean. Didn't you live on a boat for a while?
Yeah.
At some point?
Yeah. It was. There is something about living on boats that feels
legendary.
Legendary.
You just feel like you're in a story, like when you're on a boat.
Even when you say, I live on a boat, it feels kind of story-esque. But we shouldn't be confused. Some people on boats do not view life in such a romantic way. Sometimes it's hard work and whatnot.
And particularly anyone that was on a boat that is involved in the stories that we're going to talk about probably regretted being on that boat at some point.
They probably wish they weren't on a boat.
They probably definitely wish that they were on a boat.
So most of the population in Antarctica now is just scientists and researchers of sorts, right?
It's just scientists, researchers, and no animals except for penguins.
And walrus.
Yeah.
Walrus?
Walruses? Yeah, I think that's right. I found that really interesting because we talked about before we recorded about how there's no polar bears. And you always think about, why is it not exactly like the Arctic where there's polar bears and narwhals and
like
snow leopards?
Yeah, there's like different creatures. I always do. I did find that strange because it was so desolate compared to the North Pole. I think the South Pole certainly would have like some
wildlife. Yeah, even the emperor penguins that live there, they don't go more than 75 miles in to breed. So like once you get past that 75-mile radius, that there's nothing that lives there. I think I read that the smallest thing is like the size of like your fingernail that lives there, and it's like some kind of snail or amoeba or something like that. But don't quote me on that when I get off into the weeds. So it has no native people that live there, and probably because the coldest that the temperature gets, the coldest temperature recorded in Antarctica, which is the coldest temperature in the whole world, was negative 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
That sounds terrible.
And I didn't do the calculation to Celsius for our international audiences and those on the.
You can ask Google.
Is Celsius on the metric system, or is it just like? It's probably not, but you think of it as being like the metric system.
I watched this comedian once that was like, "Hey, Americans, they definitely have it right when it comes to Fahrenheit and miles per hour." And he's like, everything else is whatever, but these two, everyone should change it to, because it feels like a percentage. Like if you're going. If it is 50 degrees Fahrenheit, it's about 50% warm.
Right.
So it's a bit cold.
If it's 100 degrees, it's 100% warm.
It's 100% hot. Anything beyond that is just the worst. If it's like 90s, it's like 90% hot. And you're like,
It's like that with miles an hour too. Like if you're going 100, you're pretty much going as fast as like you need to be going. Or whatever.
If you go beyond that, you're just like going way.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going 100% fast, right?
It
was a great, I don't even remember what comedian did it, but they obviously were much funnier than me.
I totally agree with that.
I'm like, I feel like if it's negative 170 Fahrenheit, that's just way too cold. That's like an opposite of like, that's almost 200%.
It's even harder to imagine the negative part too, because like once you get down past freezing, it's like I don't really have much of a concept of how cold that is, but I'm sure that some of you who live in those places understand. what it's like to be closer to zero. Because then you have absolute zero, whatever that means. But that's like a whole totally different thing.
Yeah, that's like what
that's like Pluto and things like that.
What would you do for fun
in Antarctica?
Yeah.
Well, apparently they have like a music festival, and it's all the people that perform at the music festival are people that are scientists and stuff like at the bases, and they have a film festival too that's like spread out amongst the scientific research centers, and they're all short films, like 5 minutes or less.
You know that these guys are like the biggest nerds in the world.
I'm sure that they
like,
are.
These are in fact the biggest nerds. they're committed to nerdism. So I bet you they're the best film festivals, music festivals. They probably make.
I don't know about the music festival part of it.
They just make up these obscure things that like none of us.
They're just dancing for warmth at this point, so they don't freeze to death. Oh, I got a question, Jesse. Okay, so when you were in elementary school, how many oceans did you learn that there were?
Oh my God. How many oceans are there right now? I'm thinking.
Well, think about the oceans.
Pacific, got the Atlantic, got the Indian,
and
got the Arctic.
Arctic Ocean.
Yeah.
Okay, so 4 oceans.
To my memory right now, yes.
Okay, so
I think I remember there being a 5th.
Well, I don't remember there being a 5th, but at some point there was a 5th, and it's called the Southern Ocean, and it's the ocean that surrounds Antarctica. But I never knew about that until I started doing research for this.
Wow.
Have you heard about the Southern Ocean before?
Not until this, and they kept on calling it the Southern Ocean. I didn't recognize it as an ocean. I was like, oh, they're just being weird and calling the ocean.
Yeah, the Southern Ocean. No, like at some point, it's like when they took Pluto off the planet list, they put the Southern Ocean on there to like balance it out.
Yeah, like, well, there's no planet out there, so let's give them a Southern Ocean.
Yeah, and let's confuse everybody over 30 who never learned about the Southern Ocean.
Yeah, right.
But it makes sense though, because then you don't have to like delineate between, well, this is the part that's below the Indian and this is the part that's below the Pacific and whatever. It's just this is the Southern
Ocean,
and it has like its own characteristics too. Like the Southern Ocean is notorious for having the most dangerous weather and like sea conditions of anywhere of any of the oceans.
After reading everything I've read, yes, I believe that.
It's because if you see, I don't know if you can see it up here, but we got this new map for season 2 up here. And
we're gonna start putting pins in it so that you guys know everywhere we've gone.
And you see where the peninsula goes up towards South America down there, where where Argentina is.
Oh yeah.
And since that creates like a choke point for like the winds and the tides, and they all have to go through that little area, so it causes them to speed up significantly. This is called the Drake Passage.
Yeah, the Drake Pass, which is crazy.
Yes, and it makes it. So you see, like it's pretty close. And you're like, okay, well, people from there could probably get to there, but since it's the worst conditions in the world for the sea, it makes it traveling it like very dangerous.
Jeez, wow, cool. I mean, the Drake Pass sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, it does.
Sounds like it belongs in mythology.
I think that's a Francis Drake Passage, maybe. I would imagine. Don't quote me 100% on that, but we'll see.
That'll be one of these things we correct. So I was thinking about nightlife. So what's nightlife like
in Antarctica?
In Antarctica, right?
Well, it depends on, I guess, what you mean by nightlife, because they live in that place where they have like 6 months of the sun, of the darkness, and 6 months of the sun.
Oh yeah. So what does that look like? So I was reading a little article by a guy named Hunter.
What's up, Hunter?
Yeah, right. What's up, Hunter? I don't know anything about him. He seemed like he was kind of he seemed like a badass a litit bit, but also like he wanted to be a badass a bit less.
I know people like that.
Yeah, but I learned a little bit about McMurdo, the station of McMurdo.
This is the most populated.
Yeah, most populated, which is still not a lot. It's like what, 1,200 during the summer, 200 during the winter. It goes on crew.
Yeah,
and that's not much. And I was thinking, what libation comes from Antarctica? There is none. There's no libation that comes from Antarctica because nothing grows there.
Melted glaciers.
Melted glacier water mixed with whatever you bring. Yep. So
what did we bring?
yeah. So today I brought, Coors Banquet.
Coors Banquet?
Right from Colorado.
How in the world does Coors Banquet have to do with Antarctica?
Oh yeah. So That's what I thought. How does this have anything to do with this? So there are, at the station, McMurdo Station, there are 3 bars.
Wow. There's like 80 buildings and like 3 bars.
Well, one acts during the day. It's a coffee shop.
Okay.
And at night, they do like a wine.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently the wine is like really like crappy wine.
Do they make it there?
I don't think so. I think it's just cheap.
Why would it be crappy? They just like import the crappy wine.
Just, they're like, oh, these guys are working here.
They should get some good Malbecs, from
yeah.
South America down there. They're just right next to Argentina.
They're right there. But yeah, so they get cheap wine and they have like board games.
Wow.
And bands play.
Riveting. These are the ones that play at the music festival too.
Yeah,
probably.
Super riveting, right? But then there's another place called, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong. It's Galahad's Pub, Antarctica.
Okay.
It's Gallagher. Gallagher's?
Maybe.
Yeah. Anyways, this pub is kind of like called like the non-smoking pub.
Okay.
It's like you can go have a good time, get some grilled food. Here is like, they also have like karaoke, relax after work kind of thing. Here, the drinks they have is you can either get canned beer or Jack and Coke.
And that's it?
Pretty much. And for a long time, it was mostly New Zealand beers.
Interesting. I've never had a New Zealand beer.
Yeah. Well, and they're very hard to find.
One day we'll have to do a New Zealand episode and get some New Zealand beer.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking for New Zealand beer for this episode, but that's just not very around. So I was doing a little search, and I found on, of all places, Reddit. There was someone who recently was at this pub, and they were like, "Oh, they have a new stock. They also have Coors Banquet."
Cheers.
And good old American beer from Rocky Mountains.
Well,
and
we thought about
one beer they had from this area.
That's kind of funny that'd be the one that they chose to have was the Coors Banquet beer. I don't even think of Coors Banquet as like a crowd pleasing beer, but
it's like a super regular beer. Like
yeah.
Right now, just drinking it.
I can't think of crowd pleasing beers, but I can think of crowd dividing beers. So if they had Bud Light, that might
they can't do Bud Light
cause a problem.
but
we were going to have some drink with dry ice because we wanted to encompass the dryness of Antarctica being actually the driest continent because it has the lowest annual precipitation and ice for Antarctica, obviously. But I got some mixed opinions online about whether or not it was safe to put dry ice in drinks. And we
burn your esophagus.
Yeah, we decided to like err on the side of caution with both of us and not do the dry ice because we
not do the dry iced mix and rather drink Coors Banquet.
Yes, you didn't want to see our throats being melted through by the dry ice on camera.
And so and it had to be out of a can because that's like the kind of beer they have. They don't have like the glass bottles that you get, the cool Coors glass bottles.
I would imagine glass would be like really fragile.
Yeah,
because it's so cold that Yeah.
So you have to get the can.
Interesting.
And so I figured, even the New Zealand beers were just like cheap canned. Like what you had to really have, if we wanted to drink like an Antarctican.
That sounds right.
You have to drink cheap regular beer because that's what they have.
That's interesting because I did read a report that said that alcoholism and like alcohol abuse was a crazy problem amongst people who live in Antarctica.
Oh, they have super restrictions at home. The rations, the alcohol rations you're allowed to have in your house is you can have 18 beers a week in the house.
What?
3 bottles of wine or 1 bottle of liquor, like a 750 milliliter
per week.
Yeah, which I'm like, that's actually quite a bit.
I don't know. We'll see. I could drink. That's like
18 beers tonight.
That's like 2 episodes of Legends and Libations, maybe 3.
So then there's a third bar. This third bar is a little different from the other ones.
Okay.
While the other 2 are like the coffee shop wine bar is a little posh. And this Gallagher's pub is a little bit more. it's a little bit more family oriented.
Okay.
In fact, it's even named after one of the guys naval officers who started it, and he died like the first winter he opened it, and they named it after it.
Bad luck, mate.
Yeah, bad luck. The other one's called Southern Exposure.
I can think of lots of jokes that can go along with that, but they write themselves. So I'm just going to spare myself the editing and just not include them right now.
So Southern Exposure, it's considered the smoking bar. It's kind of badass in the way it sounds. It's like the way it was described is you walk through these like double oak doors into a vestibule to kind of keep out the cold.
Okay.
You walk in and the beams are like low wooden beams and it feels very piratey. There's like Christmas lights like in the corner, like put up in the corner.
That sounds like someplace we'd want to try to go.
Thick, heavy smoke in there. And they have like the pool table.
Right.
All the tables are built for poker. It just seems really kind of hardcore. And there you can get obviously also beer and Jack and Coke. This place
you get the same drinks, but the environment is different.
Well, apparently these people are the people who like everyone else is like, cool, I'm in Antarctica. This is people who are like, I don't give a shit that I'm here.
they regret being there.
They regret being there. They're like, I'm here for the work.
But it's like the winter time and they can't get a ride back.
And they're raging alcoholics. They're like, they just want to get like,
they're getting the tokens from other people.
If there's beer tokens. They're getting wasted that night. Tomorrow they're going to go operate heavy machinery. And they're going to do it all over again, over and over. So this is like the heavy drinker bar. That stays open later than the other ones. That all the bartenders from the other ones go to once they close.
So there's like a system. I see. Yeah.
So Southern Exposure.
You know which one you want to go to and which one you want to avoid.
Yeah.
If you're down there.
And they say you can judge people by which one.
You know which bar they go to when you meet them.
Yeah. Well, and once you know what bar they go to, you know a lot about them.
I understand.
Yeah.
It sounds like we'll be doing an episode from one of these bars if we ever make it down to Antarctica. But apparently it's pretty difficult to go to Antarctica. Like you can't just up and go.
Not like overnight.
No, there used to be like tours that you could do. Like they still do tours on cruise ships and stuff, but a good portion of them don't even get off in Antarctica. They just kind of look at it from the boat. And you used to be able to get in an airplane in New Zealand and like do like a sightseeing
that'd be cool.
Fly over. But then I think in the 70s, one of these passenger airliners had the wrong coordinates and it crashed into Antarctica's highest peak and like 270 people died.
Wow.
So they stopped doing the air flight tours after that.
This is one mistake.
I think that they reinstated them like recently, but
that would be kind of cool.
That was a pretty big airline disaster though. Like 200 something people is a ton, especially for hitting a mountain out of nowhere because you thought that you were not flying over a mountain range at all.
Yeah, geez.
Somebody screwed up the coordinates. Yeah, exactly.
What is crazy about Antarctica is that like even before it was ever discovered, people were dreaming of it. Like, but like the Greeks literally had like the Greeks, their whole thing was like the world is balanced, and since there's ice up top
and all this land mass,
and all this land mass, then there should be ice on the bottom. So they even had a thing called Arctos or Antarctica, Arctos, and that was the Antarctica of the Greek world. They figured
it was a theoretical thing.
They figured it existed. It's down there, but we don't know how to get there or anything.
Because they believed that since there was this landmass up top, there had to be an equal but opposite landmass on the bottom of the planet.
Yeah, to keep us
balanced, or it would throw our orbit off.
So yeah, the ancient Greeks were already kind of dreaming up of this idea of Antarctica. I wonder if that's where we got the name too, because the names are similar enough, but not quite the same.
You'd think that we would look at something as simple as like what it's named for, but we just like dive straight into the deep end when it comes with these stories and stuff. I saw the paragraph about why it's called Antarctica, and I went, pfft, I'm skipping this because it's not interesting.
I don't care why it's called Antarctica.
Now I wish that I knew.
So there's also currently what they call the Antarctic Treaty. You know a little bit about that?
I know that I want to say it's from like the 60s. And
59.
59, I was close.
First 59, so pretty much the 60s.
It says that we can't do military bases and military maneuvers in Antarctica.
Well, it does quite a few things.
And we have to share.
Yeah, we have to share share knowledge, Antarctica shall be used for peaceful purposes only. So you can't go to. I guess we can't have an all-out war on a proxy war on Antarctica.
It can't be the next Middle East.
Yeah. It should always be freedom of scientific investigation, and everyone has to work together.
And you can go to some other countries like stations and research centers.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, that's a weird thing. Have you ever thought about who owns Antarctica?
I don't know. Who does own Antarctica?
According to the treaty, it's owned by 7 countries. Can you do you have any guess of what those 7 countries might be?
Chile and Argentina.
Well, yeah. So those are actually included.
Okay.
Yep.
France.
Yeah, which I think is weird, right?
Uh-huh.
So any others?
France is one of those like sneaky imperialist countries that you don't think of because you think of America and you think of Great Britain and Spain doing imperialism.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time you don't think about France doing it.
But they did it.
But they did.
They did it.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it is Argentina.
Russia?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. My bad.
Argentina, Australia.
Okay, I see that. They're close.
Yeah. Chile.
Mm-hmm.
France, and you're like, what are you doing there, France?
I don't know.
What are you doing there? New Zealand. Okay, you're fair.
Okay.
Norway.
That's so strange to me because they're so far away.
They're so far away.
Yeah.
And I kept on wanting to get the Norwegian ales for this. Like, I could justify it, but I'm getting Coors because that's all those boys can drink
That's
out there.
so funny. We're commiserating with them.
Yeah, we're with you. We're drinking Coors Banquet with you guys. And then
In solidarity.
in solidarity to Antarctic research. And of course, England or Britain. Great Britain, right? Strangely, both Russia and America do not own any of the land.
I found that really weird about America not owning any.
Yeah, we have bases there,
Right.
but like we don't. It's not partly ours.
It seems like the claims are just kind of arbitrary anyway. Like
Right?
they're
Like some of them make sense. Like you're like, yeah, Argentina, yeah, Australia, New Zealand.
it's
But then
sliced like a pie though, right? But the pie is not evenly distributed. It's like some slivers are really skinny and some of them are pretty big.
yeah, and why?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know why. What it says is the U.S. and Russia maintain a basis of claim, which I tried looking up what that meant, and it was used in a different way.
I think it's
Basis
kind of
of
like
claim was like trying to get into a country.
it's like they're like the countries at large or whatever. Like they could just like go into wherever
Yeah, like
they want to.
There.
But we're not on the official list of countries that own
Not on the
Antarctica.
list.
Yeah.
Not on the list, but like they see us in
The
like,
VIPs or something like that. Yeah. They appointed themselves the VIP countries of Antarctica is what it sounds like.
So yeah, it's super strange. You hear about the flat earthers, right?
I was just thinking about that too. So I don't know how many of you are big into like the flat earth or know a lot about flat earth, but it's one of those.
I did not know much about it.
Well, it's one of those conspiracies that is probably there for disinformation to like discredit other conspiracies that might actually have some legs. And because the minute that someone says flat earth, it's like someone saying they're a Scientologist, it completely discredits them and you don't take them seriously anymore.
I can't believe you anymore. I didn't. It's weird because from what I understand, it comes from a really strange misunderstanding of like biblical texts where there's a point in the poetry of the Psalms, the poetry, again, a book of poetry, where King David says something about God be ruling over the 4 corners of the earth. And they're like,
they just took that and ran with it because you could easily interpret that to mean the 4 directions though.
Exactly.
The north, south, east, and west.
Well, and also it's just like poetic like words, right? And it's also the King James translation. So apparently a whole bunch of people are like, well, that means the government's lying to us.
Then they just like blew it out of proportion. Yeah. So how Antarctica plays into this is that they think that when you just go as far as you can go in any of the directions across the ocean, that eventually you're going to run into the ice wall.
The ice wall, yeah.
And the ice wall is what keeps us contained inside the flat earth. And if you break out of the ice wall, then that's like getting out of the matrix or whatever. And then you like get into the next realm or something.
Which sounds super cool.
It does sound really cool though. Like
breaking down the ice wall.
It's like going in a video game and just like getting out of the confines of the game that it allows you to be in. But so there are parts of Antarctica like around the coastline, like you have a little bit of the coast is like rocks and glaciers, but some of it are these ice cliffs that are pretty visually striking, where it just looks like a sheer ice wall going straight out of the ocean. And I could see where your imagination could run away with you and say, well, this is the ice wall at the end of the world containing us in the flat earth.
Yeah, I can't get past flat earth because of this.
I started listening to a podcast for research for this, and within the first 5 minutes, this guy was like, all right, well, I don't want you guys. You need to approach this with an open mind, but flat Earth. I've got this camera that I got from eBay, and it proves that you can still see ships over the horizon, even when you can't see them with the naked eye. That means that the flat Earth is real because this camera can see these ships. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense at all, because if the camera could see the ships, and quote me if I'm wrong or like correct me in the comments, but you would be able to see it with a telescope or binoculars too. Yeah. Why do you have to have this special $400 camera from eBay to be able to see it? How would that let you see it any better?
They just etched little ships actually.
That's funny, Jesse.
Well, just this past,
I turned that podcast off after that.
Yeah, of course. Apparently, because of this like theory of flat Earth, the sun does set on Antarctica in the flat Earth theory.
How does it do that?
Because I guess it just like comes over. Here's the sun. Boop, it's gone. Comes up. Boop, it's gone.
Where does it go?
To
the upside down.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. But
the inverse world or something.
There's a pastor. His name is Pastor Reverend Duffy.
Sounds credible.
Yeah. Well, he wanted to. He's the pastor of Agape Kingdom Fellowship Church. He wanted to disprove the flat Earth.
That's definitely a church in a strip mall.
Right. Definitely. He wanted to disprove the flat Earth theory because too many of his congregation was falling for it. Right. I know.
All the things, the temptations that could befall your congregation, if it's flat Earth, you might need to get a few different kind of members. But what did he do?
Yeah, he's like, first his whole thing is God is a God of truth, and so and the Earth being round is just part of the truth, and so if the scientific world is true, that's part of knowing God. You're like, okay, cool, I like Duffy. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I'm going to prove the flat earthers wrong, because he was getting in arguments with friends and stuff online about it, and he was just like
some Facebook arguments.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, exactly. Wow. He's just like, this is ridiculous.
Where all the best arguments and rationale is had is
all
on Facebook. All
the greatest ones, usually
on Mark Zuckerberg's forum. God.
So what he does is he invites the group of flat earthers and some of his congregation to come with him to Antarctica to watch the sun not go down.
The Midnight Sun.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool name.
Yeah, it is the land of the midnight sun. Mm-hmm. So they're going to do that for 4 days. They're going to be in Antarctica observing the sun.
And how did these people take it?
Some people go. Yeah, there's some people actually go with them, and it's like flat earthers go. One particular YouTuber, and I forgot to write down his name because, well, I just forgot. He attended the trip, and he was persuaded by the experiment that like, oh, yep, this is accurate.
He was wrong.
Yeah, he's like, I don't believe in flat Earth anymore. This is dumb. I'm not gonna stick with it.
That's good. It takes a lot of courage to admit that you're wrong.
Well, definitely, because he had a huge YouTube following. Mm-hmm. Leave the Flat Earth Society, which did you know they have a convention in Denver, Colorado?
Oh, wow. Full circle. There we go.
The beer comes in again. Yeah, they have a convention of flat earthers in Denver, Colorado every year. They come from all around the globe.
Well, I bet there's not that guy who built his own rocket to prove that the Earth was flat, and he died because he won't be there, sadly.
So anyways, mind you, on the other hand, a lot of people have said, a lot of flat Earth theorists have said, nope, this isn't real. This is actually all done in a studio, like the big
like the moon landing.
Yeah, like the moon landing, exactly. Or they say, no, look, the footprints are wrong, or the shadows are wrong, or the camera angles are off.
The flag is waving.
Yeah. So they're like, no, this isn't real. In fact, there's even in Alabama, there's a pastor who is claiming that the devil himself went with Pastor Duffy to Antarctica and threw a sun into the sky, a fireball into the sky to trick everyone, to deceive everyone.
To what end?
I don't know. Like, why? Why is this a fight?
Well, like the fact that they're so off in the weeds on this proves that they have completely lost the plot.
Yeah, like they don't know why.
They're not focused on the right things at all. If we're like, why are we in Antarctica arguing about flat Earth?
Yeah, like why? What? And they would even try discrediting him, being like, no, look, he has like a weird financial past, or he did bad things in the past.
He stands to gain from this. Yeah.
And you're just like, I can't believe he decided to fly there to prove people wrong on this. But
that's really like putting your money where your mouth is. But or did he use like donation money to the church?
No, he used his own money.
He used his own money. Okay, that's a very important distinction right there.
He used his own money, and so like he seems like, but like for him to have enough passion to be like, I got in a Facebook argument. I'm going to go to Antarctica
to prove it.
Pricey.
Yeah, exactly. It's not cheap to go to Antarctica. Most definitely. I don't think they have like hotels that you can stay at there.
No, not at all.
I'm pretty sure that you have to like somehow be approved in order to visit Antarctica.
What was his approval? I'm a pastor. I'm going to go preach at church or something.
That usually works for a lot of people.
Yeah. So that was Duffy against the flat earthers. Duffy versus the flat earthers.
So we're kind of doing like false things about Antarctica right now. Do you want to talk about some things that ended up being bunk? Obviously.
Oh yeah, I would love to. I'd love to learn some more.
Or some uninteresting things that are blown out, or sensationalized.
I am glad to find out the Earth was round the whole time.
Good.
I always figured that.
It was always a little bit of doubt in my mind.
But I'm glad Duffy. I'm glad Duffy took up the cause and fought for us to know that knowledge.
Well, the people in the know really know that the Earth is not indeed flat, but it is actually hollow. And as we will talk about near the end of the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, a little preview for what's coming up. If you stick around till the end of this. Yes. So some other like dumb things about Antarctica that I kept finding were the blood falls. Did you see that?
I didn't see the blood falls.
If you look up for the blood falls on Antarctica, you'll see there's what looks like a frozen waterfall of blood. It's like a red liquid.
Wow.
It's coming out of this glacier and it's just like frozen in place, and it's bleeding all over this like rocks and stuff on the ground. And it's like, oh, well, what makes this blood red liquid come out of this glacier? What could it possibly be? And it's so totally sensationalized because it's actually just like iron that is oxidized because the source is from some underground like water reservoir that has some kind of like algae or high contents of iron in it, and it breaks through when the temperature reaches a certain part, and then it has frozen in place, and it looks like it's bleeding.
That seems like it looks cool.
It looks really cool, but there's nothing like
fountain
super spectacular or mysterious about it. Like,
yeah. We know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it is cool. It is cool looking, but I don't like how it's sold to be some sort of just like supernatural thing or whatever
coming out of the rock.
Yeah, exactly. What could that be?
Iron. Same thing that we see a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of Google Earth archaeology, or like people who are, I want to say armchair Google Earth archaeology.
Armchair archaeology.
Yes.
But just with Google.
Yeah.
Scroll.
Exactly. So they're like looking at Google Earth and zooming in on Antarctica and trying to find anomalous things that they can sensationalize and turn into like clickbait articles. And you might have seen a few of these. Like there's like the door in the mountain where there's like, it looks like there's a door in the side of this hill, but really it's just like a big ice cube or like a glacier. Then the sunlight hits it, and because of pareidolia and our need as humans to recognize patterns in things, we look at it. It's like the face on Mars or the man on the moon or whatever. We look at it and we're like, oh, that must be a door, is what it is, but it's not. It's just the way that the ice is. And
that kind of stuff happens in real life all the time.
Mm-hmm. There was another one, a big one that happened on one of the islands off the coast of Antarctica, where I think it was 2017 or 2018. It was like crashed UFO spotted on Antarctica, and it looks like there's this like cigar shaped formation that has skidded into the snow, and it has like an impact trail left behind it, like it has slid for several hundred yards down this mountain, and it looks pretty cool. It's like, oh man, what is that? Is that something from space or whatever? But if you just like follow the trail of it, it's just like a boulder or a glacier. I think it was a boulder because it was a rock, but it had just like collapsed from this mountain and had like gone to rest in the snow. But it was just because of the shape of it. Then people thought that it was a UFO. And it's like Antarctica has tons of cool stuff about that already, that there's no need to muddy the waters with all these exaggerated claims of just what you think you found on some Google Earth thing.
Yeah. Armchair archaeology, right?
Well, it's like this thing with Mars that I just mentioned. And a lot of times you can go back to those same images and see them taken at different dates, and it totally changes like what the picture is. Yeah. Because it's just like, oh, how the lens was and how the light were at these specific points in time made it look like something.
How often does Google Earth
update their thing? I want to say not as frequently for Antarctica as it probably does for
other places.
For other like civilized places.
I love when the Google cars pass. You know,
I've only ever seen like one Google car.
I love seeing them.
You just like strike a pose and
I tried to. I hope they catch me.
Have you ever seen yourself afterwards? Like
that cool.
You'd have to also like remember where you were.
Yeah, because it's always just that I can't even remember where. I've seen it probably 3 times, but I don't remember any of those places I've seen them.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, so I wanted to get out some of those like annoying things because I didn't want people to be like, well, why didn't you talk about the Blood Falls or like the crashed UFOs or whatever? Because there's so much better things to talk about. And if you guys haven't noticed, like this continent of Antarctica is such a large endeavor for us to do an episode on.
Yeah, like
we're going to be kind of like jumping around.
We're going to be doing our best.
And we're going to be doing a lot of like small anecdotes.
Yeah. Because that's the only way to do this.
We're not going to have one big overarching story.
Because I don't know if Antarctica has one big arching story. There's a lot of little stories around the barriers of it.
But I'm going to do my best at the end, Jesse. I've got my own unified theory of Antarctica that I'm going to give you guys at the end. And it's going to tie in everything together.
I'm excited to hear this because I'm really curious on what you're going to end up saying. There's a lot of like question on who discovered Antarctica. I mean, obviously the Greeks were thinking about it, right?
And they weren't the only ones. I want to say that like there's a map of people from Russia, maybe from the 18th or 17th century, like as recently as there, and they still did not have anything on their globe for the most southern point of the world. Yeah,
of course. And because that's kind of hard. I tried looking up some medieval stuff. The most I got was that Dante thought, like purgatory was on the other side of the world.
Everything is purgatory to Dante for some reason.
Just on the other side.
Talk about a unified theory.
Yeah, like Purgatorio right over there.
Yes.
But that was really actually where the Americas are. So who knows? So do you have a theory of who was first? I have one. I have a running theory of who was first, but it's an oral tradition.
Let's see. As far as modern history goes, I would say, why is it not the people closest to it on the map? Why is it not people from South America? So I'm going to go with, how about people from like Argentina, Chile, those sort of places.
Yeah, I was really hoping to find some really cool legends that were Chilean or I didn't.
I didn't either.
I looked really hard. And South African. I didn't find anything well, now that I look at it, South Africa's quite far away.
Not quite as close as the other ones, but
the oldest tradition that we have actually is from the Polynesians.
Okay. So the islanders, islanders. To the west. Yeah.
Pacific Islanders.
Because they had to be good at making boats and seafaring.
Which I did not expect. I did not expect for them to be so good at using boats. Pacific Islanders.
They've got to be, because how do they get there?
Exactly. I'm like, and I guess I used to think that. I was like, how did all these people get on the islands? And like, how did they get there? Well, and then you also have like those tribes of people that are on islands and they're like still like super and I don't have boats. And I'm like, how do you think you got there?
Right, exactly.
Like, why don't you have boats now?
That's a good question. It's like they've lost their history somehow.
Yeah. Somehow they lost who they were. Because there is a hero from 650 AD.
650 AD. Oh, wow.
So this is oral tradition. And God, I'm going to butcher his name. Huite Rangiora.
I'll try to put it on the screen. Huite Rangoria. I don't know.
It translates to navigator.
What language is this? Polynesian?
Yeah.
We'll just say Polynesian.
Yeah. And that could be a lot of languages. I don't even know if I know what language this is exactly. But there was this character, this guy, this hero, who was, we're going to call him Rangoria for short. Rangoria? Short? Rangoria?
Rangoria.
He was born like a highborn. He was a great explorer. He was like super like inspired by Christopher Columbus. Only kidding. Only kidding. Not actually inspired by Christopher Columbus.
He had like posters of him on his wall.
I want to discover the new world.
Yep.
Well, he was a badass sailor. Like he actually was super comprehended like weather patterns, and he had their boats were cool. Like look at this boat. They have like these cool like almost triangular sails. So like, they're doing better than the English in like the late medieval period.
I've seen the theories that how South America was colonized too, because they landed on the coast of like Chile. And Peru.
These guys were sailing everywhere. And they would go out into the deep ocean with these kind of boats, these little catamaran kind of things.
That's crazy.
I know. And so he was running a crew, and he got like brought into like he kept on going south. He followed the east coast down, and he found that it kept on getting colder and colder, and then he finally like went to the last island that he knew and decided to keep going south to the point where there was no land around. He knew where he was because he knew the stars, he knew the ocean patterns, he knew the animals, but he went to a place that he had no idea where he was. He has said, like in like the oral tradition, he went somewhere that was foggy and misty. It was a dark place where he could not see the sun.
So he was there during the
wintertime. Yeah, there were mountainous waves. He saw animals with tusks that dove under the water.
Walrus.
Yeah, right. Yeah, walrus. Right. He also said that that the rocks grew out of the sea, whose summits pierced the skies. Maybe glaciers.
Yeah, glaciers. Yeah.
He also described seeing a woman with hair that waved about in the water and on the surface of the sea, which some have said maybe
mermaids.
Yeah, mermaids.
It's got to be mermaids.
It has to be mermaids. It's boring to say seaweed, so it's definitely mermaids.
That's funny.
And he ended up traveling like around that area for just a little bit of time. He would call the sea. He would say that it was like arrowroot, which whenever you carve arrowroot, it's just like white and foamy. So he called it the arrow.
Ah, I see.
Arrow roots. The foamy ocean, right?
Why was it foamy? But I know that the ocean off the coast of Antarctica is some of like the most fertile for like microorganisms like plankton and stuff like that and algae. Yeah. So it might have had something to do with that.
I'm always surprised by the little things that can grow in that cold of air.
Right? That's what a lot of the research down there is constantly doing. Since they can't test who can blow each other up the best, they have to actually.
Yeah, they're like, I guess we're real research.
Yeah. So did he return? Did he live?
Yeah. So he returned. He went back up the western coast of some of the islands.
Okay.
And for some reason it was very important that he like rested at this river, the Riwaka River, that emerges from underground.
Wow.
He rested there and healed, and there's a big statue that was supposedly built for him there. And he came and told his people about it. He told them about the land they called the Southern Ocean. He called it the Southern Ocean.
That's awesome.
And so I wondered if Southern Ocean came from him.
Maybe so.
But
it might be just because it's the most Southern Ocean.
Yeah,
but
exactly. And who knows how far he actually made it? Because this is like.
That's why there's a lot of dispute with who was the first one to see Antarctica or who was the first one to land on Antarctica, because the ice shelf that forms around Antarctica in the wintertime almost doubles in size the continent. Exactly. It extends so far out into the ocean and seems just like the land that you could easily mistake like icebergs for being part of the continent.
Yeah, the truth is he might have just seen some of that on his way down. But it is cool that he was like that good at like navigating, that he in those little boats in the wintertime went to like the land where there was no sun.
It's very impressive.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine it.
And the story or the account of the underground river lends some credence to what we're going to talk about later on, and how Antarctica was not always a desolate, ice-ridden wasteland that it is today.
Oh, that's interesting.
Is that like?
Because it feels like Hoth from Star Wars.
Yes, it does.
It's just like, oh, there's nothing here.
It does definitely feel like that. So it's not disputed that allegedly, like millions of years ago, that there were plants and animals living in Antarctica. They found fossils in like forests of leaves, animals, like dinosaurs, that smaller dinosaurs, not like T-Rex sized dinosaurs, but there were dinosaurs that lived in Antarctica when it was a rainforest, supposedly millions of years ago.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
And the climate was obviously a lot different than
subtropical.
Like a temperate rainforest type climate that you wouldn't expect to be found at the very bottom of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to talk about something that we have mentioned in the Atlantis episode that kind of like might explain why the climate was different back then, and why we have accounts of like this guy whose name I can't remember already, Rangoria or something like that. Yes, of him mentioning
Hute Rangoria.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool name.
We're definitely saying this wrong, guys. Like,
I'll put it on the screen because you wouldn't even be able to type it out from how we're pronouncing it.
You could just type it. You could type his name into YouTube and actually hear it. But for some reason, I dedicated myself to only reading things and never listening.
Sometimes that happens, and we don't realize that we need to say them out loud until we get here, and then we're like, "Oh!"
And then we're here and we're drinking, so we go.
Like, how do we pronounce anything? But see, I want to talk about Atlantis for a second, and
Atlantis.
Yeah, okay. So we talked about this in the Atlantis episode, how there was this thing called the Piri Reis map. And it was this map from the 1500s. Let's see, I wrote this down. Okay, from 1513. And this map shows an ice-free coast of Antarctica. And it's like, how would they know if Antarctica has supposedly, according to official science, been covered by a mile-thick ice sheet for the last at least probably like million years or something like that?
That's such old water.
I know. It most definitely is.
Been evaporated for so long.
And so, okay, so we'll say this Piri Reis guy is wrong or whatever, and that it's not Antarctica in his map. Say that he's just exaggerating the coast of South America or whatever he knows. There's also this thing called the Orontius Phineas map in 1531, and it shows subglacial land surfaces of Antarctica. Mm-hmm. So like mountain ranges, and not just where the coast is, but like inland things as well. Mm-hmm. It gives a little bit more detail. And it's kind of, okay, well, it's easy to dismiss the first one, but it's kind of hard to argue with like there being two of them. But not only is there two of them, you might have heard of the different ways that maps are portrayed on a flat surface, because it's hard to project a globe on a 2D plane. Absolutely. And one of the ways that it is projected commonly is called the Mercator projection. And I think that this is the Mercator projection, not with the separate Antarctica that's like off to the side. I think on the Mercator projection, I might be wrong, but it shows like the giant Antarctica at the bottom, because things at the poles get stretched to look a lot larger. Like Greenland is like not actually that big. Greenland's like a lot closer to the size of like Saudi Arabia than it is like, it looks like it's as big as Canada. Yeah, it looks huge. Right? Yeah, it looks humongous.
Yeah, I've heard that. It makes countries as they get further from the equator look
a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But he did a map in 1569 that was even more detailed of the ice-free continent of Antarctica, and had more like land masses, and had mountain ridges and rivers and stuff like that.
It's so interesting if like it's not.
So like
thousands of years,
right?
Old. It's like,
yes,
that's like 500 years old.
Yeah, so it's like how, and the story goes that Piri Reis and these guys are not, they're not scouting out this land themselves and like drawing maps of it. Even though they're cartographers, they're compiling source maps that they have available to them in like their like libraries and institutions or whatever, and making it into a grander, more all encompassing map. And this goes as far as in 1737. This is my last one that I've got, is that this guy named Philippe Bosch, he was a French geographer, And his map even shows that there is a divide between East and West Antarctica.
Really?
And so you'll see that, well, right there, it kind of looks like there's an absolute line that goes down the middle of them, but it's not actually like that. It's more like the peninsula side is kind of chopped off because their mountain ridge divides the continent into half, not equal halves, but it does.
There's a mountain range.
Yes.
A little bit.
And if you were to go under the ice, the valleys that go on the side of the mountain range would be underwater. So instead of one consistent landmass being all of Antarctica, it's actually like a chain of islands as you like go out towards the peninsula. And this guy, Philip Bosch, his map showed that it was a chain of islands. So somehow he was able to know underneath the ice that it was not all one solid country.
So get this. I was in a Native American history class, and they were going over parts of like huge parts of Florida and even like southern Alabama that were showing they were just land. It was just land, but it showed that there was a swamp there at one time, and that a native like population was there, and then they got buried by water, and now they're dry again. And it's like these kind of weird concepts of like the earth,
the latitude or the altitude changing,
and the
water's level is rising.
Like it just is kind of crazy to think about. Like that there's places like that are dry land right now that were covered with water long ago, where a civilization was built there and got drowned, and then
Absolutely, you can see this. For examples that happen off the coast of India, there is a big one.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but New Zealand is a giant one. Like New Zealand is like the high point of a under the water. What's the word? Oceanic, I don't know.
Yeah.
Under the water continent that was sunken, and that the only remaining part of it that you can see is New Zealand. It's like a plateau. The whole thing is like a plateau under the water. It's not just seabed that's even like uniform depth. It's you can obviously see where there was like
it's
a
like
continent.
a plateau that's huge, and then
New Zealand, and then New Zealand is on that. Yes.
Wow. Cool.
So who's to say that the same thing couldn't happen with Antarctica? But it froze instead of remaining liquid.
Yeah, of course.
But how it ended up like this? So there's this guy that I also mentioned in the Atlantis podcast called Charles Hapgood, and he proposed this thing called the Earth crust displacement theory, and it was that imagine the most outer layer of crust of the Earth. I think it's called the lithosphere, and it's about 60 kilometers or 60 miles thick. And under the right conditions, say like the impact of an asteroid or a comet, that it could cause the lithosphere, the outer crust, to shift around the inner core, like the skin of an orange. The example that you'll read online in examples is that if the skin of the orange were to like rotate, but leaving the inner part stationary. So that could have been what happened to the crust, and that would explain why Antarctica used to have this rainforest environment, and then if something happened, like we were hit by a comet that was large enough to like a glancing blow of a comet, and it just like boom like that, and like caused enough force to cause the outer crust to kind of like rotate slightly, because a 7-degree rotation would be enough to change the environment from tropical rainforest to this like frigid wasteland that you have now. So that's just like one theory. And Graham Hancock talks a lot about that in his book. This is one of the books that Graham Hancock wrote that I like a lot. It's called Fingerprints of the Gods.
Oh, nice.
And he has a follow-up to it called Magicians of the Gods, but they're both really interesting. If you don't want to read it, you can watch his Netflix specials called Ancient Apocalypse.
Wow.
Yeah, they're really interesting. But that's one of my favorite theories for how these instances of an ice-free Antarctica keeps turning up in history. Like even with your Polynesian example, that you see that there are obviously accounts of
people coming to this like land
before it was covered in ice.
And before like what we know as modern history, right?
Because we automatically discount these people as being inferior technologically.
These guys were sailing. I can't even sail island.
Right, exactly.
I've sailed a little bit, and I do not think I could do that very easily.
Well, especially in how small these vessels that they were able.
Canoes, essentially. Jeez, but canoes with like catamarans, I guess.
Yeah. So like the normal like scientific community or whatever doesn't like this idea of the Earth crust displacement because they like to keep it neat and tidy with these plate tectonics or whatever. They only believe that there's like, the tectonics that are different, the plates that cover different geographical regions are shifting along the mantle or across the mantle, and they sometimes impact and one goes up and one goes down. But the idea of the whole thing rotating, that's just too far out of the realm of possible for most scientists to accept right now.
Yeah, but for us, we're not.
We are not scientists. We are not even paid for this.
Yeah. We're not even paid for this, so we can make whatever rules we want. So after that, we really do have like when Antarctica. When is Antarctica actually discovered by the Western world or by the Western? Yeah, I guess the Western world.
Western world, whatever we refer to as the modern world.
Modernity. When was it discovered? Yeah, when is the world as a unified world interested in getting to Antarctica?
Do you have a date for me? Because I don't have a date for you.
Well, certainly we start seeing it like in the 1700s. We start seeing it appear
because people were hunting for seals and whales.
Yeah, whales,
and they just kind of went further and further south.
Yeah, and then they're like, hey, there's this, but they can't just sail there. That's like too much, right?
Icebergs and
there's a lot of islands before that.
Yeah,
people are like, oh, this is interesting.
It's hard to differentiate between who has just spotted an island and who has spotted several islands, and if those islands make up a mainland or not. But with accounting for the massive amount of sea ice that is dangerous to sail through.
Yeah, I mean, like certainly by the late 1700s, people are talking about it. Let me tell you something that happened in the 1800s that really made this made it popular to think about this. Okay,
tell me about it.
Because people aren't like, I mean, if you were like, hey, you want to go to a country where there's nothing growing and we have to survive, does that like sound fun? No promise of gold, because like it's not like the conquistadors where it's like gold, God, glory, and gold, right?
I was just thinking about that.
None of that.
Yeah, that's Columbus in like 1492 and stuff. I have to take my jacket off because I'm boiling. But this is way later than that. Yes. So they already had the capabilities of like transversing the ocean, but they didn't have the, I guess, geographical knowledge of how difficult it would be to sail through ice in a completely dark environment.
Yeah. Well, one of these, there was a big English ship, schooner. This ship was called the Jenny. And it left with a crew the Isle of Wight, which is southern England,
that's way up there.
Yeah, that's way in 1822. It left.
Okay, early 1800s.
Yeah, early 1800s. I cannot figure out for the life of me what they were trying to do, but they had the captain had his wife, he had his dog, he had a good crew.
Were they establishing like a whaling processing thing, possibly? Possibly.
Okay. Because I've been trying to figure out what they were doing. The last like record is that like the last time anyone saw them was in Lima, Peru.
Okay. The capital.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe before it was even the capital. But by 1823, the next year, it supposedly was missing and no one had seen it.
And they couldn't just like call them up and be like,
yeah, hey
Jenny, where are you at?
Yeah, GPS. I think pretty much people thought, okay, well, this is lost at sea, right? Like, no, there's just nothing there.
You'd have to wait forever to even confirm that was what happened back in those days.
Like how you send email to this, right?
They'd have to be gone for like years for you to even be like, okay, well, those guys didn't come back. Maybe they're dead. Yeah. They could just always have gone somewhere else and decide to like live there. Or
yeah. Isn't that the weird thing? Like they could have just decided to live a different life. And I don't know what these people were trying to do. I couldn't find out anything. But in the Globist, it was a magazine in the
Globist.
Yeah, in Germany in 1840, a story came out. This story had to do with a ship called the Hope. So the original ship called the
Jenny.
This is the Hope. The Hope is a whaling ship, and in 1840, it was passing through the Drake Passage.
Dangerous place.
I know. I'm like, well, you guys are brave.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are a brave bunch. And anyways, they actually see a ship in the distance, battered.
But it's still afloat.
Yeah, it's still afloat. And in fact, as they get closer, they see 7 crew members on the deck, like in attention stance.
But they're really skinny.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're skinny, but they're not even close enough at that point. Like when they're coming up to it,
I'm spoiling the story. I'm sorry, guys.
As they're coming up to it, they're like, "Oh, there's a crew there."
Right.
That crew's not moving.
You know how it is on boats where you always see somebody on a boat and you have to wave at them, like on the lake or whatever. You're like, "What's up, guys?
Hey, what's up?"
Give that friendly wave.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't be friends with you in real life, but because we're on boats, I gotta wave to you.
Because boats.
I have a boat. You have a boat. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. We have boats.
Yeah.
So
they waved
They
and
do a little wave and they don't answer.
how rude.
I know. Freaking rude.
The nerve of these people. Universal greeting.
and as they get closer, they realize these guys aren't moving at all. They're staying really still in attention stance. And so they finally get right up to the boat and they're like, oh, shoot. These people are frozen solid.
Oh, my goodness.
But they're not frozen solid on the deck, like fetal position or anything. They're in attention stance. Ready.
Why would that be?
So it gets even weirder. So Captain Brighton, of the Hope, decides, okay, this is weird.
Brighten the Hope.
Yep. He decides to take a step onto the boat. He's like, okay, let's see what's happening here.
Brave.
And he goes down into like the captain's quarters. What does he see there? The captain sitting in his chair with a pen.
Everyone's in the action stance.
Yeah, he's in an action stance of writing. His journal's sitting there. The last entry says, May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days.
Oh.
I'm the only one left alive.
71 days?
71 days, no food.
How could they possibly survive for 71 days with no food?
Well, and if they just starve to death, then wouldn't they all just be like maybe huddled up in a corner or something? But every person they found on the ship was in an action stance.
That's so strange.
Whether it was writing
or at attention, ready to work.
And like they're just like this strange space.
Don't you starve way before 71 days though? Don't you starve after like I'd say 14 maybe. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
I mean, I know Homo sapiens were made for like famine, but I don't know. That's a pretty big famine.
Mm-hmm. Is no food mean we've been eating each other for 71 days or
there's no record of them eating each other?
Okay.
Well,
there wouldn't be because you don't eat someone and then write it down that you did it. Yeah. That's like telling on yourself right there.
Just throw them out.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's not tons of crew mentioned. So this is out in the Globist.
They cannibalized themselves.
Maybe they did. No food for 71 days. Here's the 7 people in attention stance.
Yeah, this boat's built for like 200.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it was a big ship, wasn't it?
It's a schooner, so it means it has 2 masses.
Yeah.
It's a big boat.
That's surprising. It's a good story though.
With that, the crew of the Hope, ironically, the Hope, was no hope for these guys. They buried them at sea, or some accounts say that they just left it. They said, "Hey,
hands off. This is cursed. I wouldn't mess with this."
Yeah, but the journal essentially allegedly came off of the boat with them.
They just like pried it from his dead, cold hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Really cold.
So cold.
I love ghost ship stories,
but we don't have the journal.
Why not?
Because we can't. Like, we actually haven't found a crew. We've heard the story of the whaler.
Oh, I see.
The Hope. We've heard of it, and it came out. It's been repeated every couple of years. It comes out in another magazine. It was translated.
It's an urban legend.
It was translated into the English one 100 years later. So, but we don't have any tangible records to say this has happened, except for I mean, there's a record that they were in Lima.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what even that? I don't even know what record that is.
Right.
Nothing would tell me specifics. And so it's like the records we have are really actually just a news article.
Just sources that are citing each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if anything, at this time, it is engaging. It is engaging with the fact that people know Antarctica is down there, and there's these ships that are just freezing.
When did this? You say the story came out?
1840.
Okay, so about 20 years after supposedly like the incident. Actually, 17 years.
17.
Okay, so this is when Antarctica is getting to be in the public consciousness a little bit.
Yeah. They're thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. So it's no longer mysterious what is at the bottom of the world as far as that there is land there.
Yeah,
we know that there's
something
continent
cold there.
So this is going to kind of fuel the race for Antarctica.
Oh yeah, absolutely. People are gonna I want to find this.
Mm-hmm. Some people don't hear this as a cautionary tale, like you should, and be like, okay, well, maybe we should just like stay back a little bit. People hear this and they're like, oh, I can do that, but better.
Yeah, like I could make it.
I'm gonna go squeeze some gold out of this or some oil.
If they're Spanish,
yes.
If they're Spanish, they're gonna find a way to make.
Or if they bleed red.
Yeah. If they're American, they're gonna find oil in it.
Most definitely.
So I'm not saying this. The Jenny is a fake story.
Sorry, I don't want to cast aspersions on the authenticity of the Jenny story.
Yeah. All I'm saying is we don't have records for it, but it is said quite a few places. Mm-hmm. Now, it could be from a story that actually happened in Greenland.
I see, because the Arctic-Antarctic confusion.
Yeah. So we're not the only one confused.
No, we're not. It's been going on for centuries.
But I mean, how good are they at keeping records in the 1800s? Could they survive? Sure.
Terrible.
We definitely have records from the 1800s, but not all of them.
No, it wasn't as meticulously documented like it is today. And I mean, especially
if a ragtag group is like, we're going to go find Antarctica. You're like, good luck.
And if they cannibalize their crew, they might not write that down.
Yeah, they might bury it. So
cast it overboard.
So truly, but this does really bring about the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
People are thinking about the ghost ship, and it is weird that they're all frozen in action.
What if they died and then their companions immediately placed them like that? Like if they had cabin fever or something, you know what I mean, where they're in a dire situation for a while, and it's kind of like those stories you hear where they people put dead bodies and dress them up and talk to them after they're dead and stuff like that because they're in such psychological distress.
And they are 71 days without food.
Mm-hmm.
So that could definitely be a thing.
Mm-hmm. And they just get up and talk to them on deck, and they're like, "Good morning, sir. Hi, yeah,
there they are.
Keep that helm steady there.
Can't wait to see your
hard to starboard."
There, right? But how much creepier it is if they just were immediately frozen.
Like there was a gust of wind that was super cold, and they were all on the point of already being frozen.
Yeah, and so just instantly frozen.
Yeah, flash frozen.
Have you seen the new anime of Lord of the Rings?
I wanted to watch that. Was that the War of the Rohirrim? Yeah.
So good. And there's a moment where
I want to see
the character is frozen well in action.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's super badass.
I want to watch that.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Anyways, so this begins the
age of exploration of Antarctica.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a revival of the age of exploration that you had with around the Columbus time and when they were discovering South America and stuff.
Yeah, but it's all built around this idea of there's no glory or gold behind us. Well, there's glory there.
There's it's like how they call the tusk of the elephants is the white gold, but now they have the whales has to be its own gold too, because the whale blubber was used for so much, as we'll talk about later on in the story, but they were using it for candles, definitely during this time period.
Could you imagine how that would smell?
Like being at sea all the time.
Whale blubber
candles. I want to say that was the number one thing that powered candles for a long time was whale blubber, which is hard to imagine.
Yeah.
The amount of candle or the amount of whale blubber that you would need to power every candle in a continent.
Yeah. Beeswax seems so much easier.
Does that work too?
Yeah. That's what they used in medieval days.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. All the monks, they were like, here's some beeswax.
Of course it was the monks.
Yeah, they were ingenious, right?
All right, so after we had this race for...
Yeah, so we do have people racing for... And some of the big ones, there's Robert Falcon Scott, which, what a badass.
That is such a cool name.
Such a cool...
Yeah, Falcon is my middle name.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it here on my ID.
Another really cool sounding one was Ernest Shackleton is kind of
Ernest Shackleton. Yeah.
It's not as cool as
He is cooler than his name, as we're going to find out. And Falcon Scott is not as cool as his name.
Yeah. The first time Falcon Scott went, his first adventure was in 1901 to like 1904, which is not that long ago.
No, and he was out. This was to find the South Pole, right?
Just to find the South Pole. And this is just a decade and a quarter ago.
Right. So no one had been to the South Pole that we know, allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
Before this.
Yeah. So people knew Antarctica.
They're British.
Yeah. He was super British. And he was on a ship called the Discovery. But apparently he didn't bring enough oranges with him and he got scurvy. How embarrassing.
That's unfortunate.
It really is. And they had to end up eating their sled dogs. Some of the crew fell in a crevice. Like, there's just a lot of bad news about this first one. And he kept on arguing. One of the Ernest. I
think there's three of them, right?
Yeah.
Him and Shackleton are the main players in the story. And they were very different personalities.
Yeah, they were bickering like an old couple.
Yeah, because Shackleton was like your charismatic, type figure. People liked him.
Yeah, people.
And Falcon Scott was more of the authoritarian.
Yeah, wore leather jackets, burned people.
This is the way it's always been. Things, yeah.
Agreed with him. Yeah, so they argued a lot. They ended up having to turn around.
They eventually made the decision to turn around, and I'm sure that was like an incredibly difficult decision to abandon being the first people to go to the South Pole. But Shackleton actually has a really good quote that he says right here, and it is better to have a live donkey than a dead lion.
Yeah.
And that's a lot like one in the hand is better than two in the bush or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we could turn around now and live, or we might be able to make it, but we probably won't come back.
Yeah. And I think there's something really important about their two ways of thinking. Ernest's way, that earnest way to live, does keep him alive much later than what we see what happens with Falcon. Right?
So they disagreed a bunch about turning around and just like each other's methods. So when they got back to England, they were at odds, and they kind of like wanted to mount their own separate expeditions next time.
They needed their own support.
It turned into a rivalry. It's like when Oasis breaks up and it forms different bands.
Exactly.
But they weren't better together, actually, like Oasis.
Yeah, exactly. They both stayed at the what the heck was that station called? That
McMurdo Station.
They both went through there and took winter there.
I wonder if it was called that then. There was a hut that they stayed at, that Falcon Scott stayed at, that we'll see what happens to him after his group stayed at the hut. But I don't want to jump ahead. So how does mountain their second expeditions go?
Yeah. So second adventure.
Take two.
Yeah, take two. 1910, coming left from New Zealand, Falcon decided to bring horses this time. Thought horses will be a really
ponies. Yeah, I think
ponies will be.
I don't know why you would be like, I'm going to bring not horses, but I'm going to bring the smaller, not quite as strong version of horses that are ponies.
I can't believe he would bring that in general, because like there's no grass.
No,
and horses eat a lot of grass.
It doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah. Well, this really wasn't.
They could have brought dogs though.
They could have brought
I want to say that the Arctic had already been discovered. The North Pole had been conquered at this point, probably, right? Yeah. And that they had done it with dogs.
Yeah. And so I don't know why he's thinking this is like a great idea.
Yeah. So not only did they use ponies, but I want to think that they also just carried the sleds themselves. They would just put a harness on. And I think that this created a lot of friction during the original expedition where Falcon Scott and Ernest Shackleton were together, is that Falcon Scott insisted on them doing the manual sled pulling by themselves, and Shackleton hated that.
Yeah. And this time he is actually trying to study more of the Ross Sea area of the and reach the South Pole. So he's doing both of these.
So it's like a fact-finding scientific sort of thing.
He brought motor sleds, ponies, and dogs. He brought dogs too. And he had
those 11, were to eat.
He had 11 others that kind of journeyed with him. And this was on October 24th, 1911.
Okay.
Of course, the motors broke down and there was no gas. The ponies had to be shot before they even reached halfway.
That's sad.
Yeah, like they shot them, but they were like too noble to eat.
So they have a little bit of dignity left.
Yeah. And the dog teams were sent back. On December 10th, the party began to ascend Beardmore Glacier, which is kind of a fun name, Beardmore Glacier. More beard.
More beard, keep you warm.
Yeah. With three man hauled sleds.
Yep.
So they exactly. By December 31st, 7 men had returned to the base. The remaining polar party, Scott, Wilson, Bauer, Oates, and Evan, had reached the pole on January 17th, 1912. They were super, super tired. They were not happy.
They finally made it, though.
They finally made it, but were
What happened?
Extremely disappointed because some Norwegian man made it before them.
And there was a Norwegian flag planted
Right
in the South Pole. Imagine seeing that from like the distance, and you're like, I think that I'm going to be the first one to get there. And you see a flag, and as you get closer to it, it's like not your flag, but your rival. It's Norwegian. It's a rival country, not your personal rival. You're Roald Amundsen was a Norwegian, and he was actually the first person to reach the South Pole officially.
Yeah, and it's
he used dogs.
And it's almost like he's not even playing the game. He just did it because it was fun. And then like, because he's not even like, he's not arguing with these two. He just did it. And then he put his flag in it.
I want to say that there was some anecdote about how Amundsen had just like gotten word that Falcon Scott and Shackleton were both mounting their expeditions to the South Pole again. And he was like, oh, well, by Jove, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring too. And that's not my Norwegian accent, but he was he had just gone to the North Pole very recently before this. Yeah. And he was just like, all right, well, let's do it, because you can't all set sail. Like if you have the idea to go to the South Pole first, you can't just go immediately. You have to wait for the season to be right, exactly. Because it can't. If it's winter, then you're probably not going to make it anyway. Yeah. So it was. They had to wait until whatever the month was, where the warmest time was, for them to be able to actually start the mission. So it gave a little bit of lead time for all these guys to get in position and start their missions at the same time.
But they're all getting their dead winter, right? Like, I mean, we're looking at December 30th.
The winter is flip flopped.
Oh yeah,
I think so.
So it's summer. Summer. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. So that's super disappointing.
Yeah, unfortunate.
So Falcon turns back, but apparently the weather was just horrid on the way back. Like just absolutely god awful. By February 17th, their food and fuel supplies were so low that people were like hardly eating. There was then a blizzard that came over them on March 17th.
So I read that these guys were eating this stuff, that their main food source was this thing called like pemmican. And it was like this fatty meat substance that came in a can, like Spam, I guess, but like Spam beef jerky hybrid with like as much fat that they could pack into a small amount, because it had needed to be really calorie dense for them to burn, to keep cold. I mean, to warm their bodies. Yeah. And they would mix it with snow to make like a little stew or whatever. They would like boil it over the fire if they were able to make a fire. And when they were like running low on this during this like starvation time that they were having, that they would have food dreams, and their food dreams wouldn't be of like the fish and chips back home in England. It would be of having as much pemmican as they could possibly get their hands on. It's so strange how it adapted. They're like, their dream state adapted to what was available, and they didn't want anything. It was just give me more of what I have that's available. Like,
please.
That's funny. It probably didn't taste that good, but I mean, I looked at pictures of it. It didn't look like horrible, but I wouldn't really want to eat it.
Get it?
That's a great question. If you work at the pemmican factory,
right,
send us some pemmican.
We'll try it next episode.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
So what happened to them?
So while they're dreaming about pemmican, there's a blizzard that happens on March 17th. And there's only 3 survivors at this point.
Wow.
Which is pretty bad.
Is Falcon Scott one of them?
Yep. Falcon Scott, Oates, someone else. I don't know who else. I forget who else.
But it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter because those 3 survivors struggled on for about 10 miles. And then they were bound to their tents because the blizzard got so bad for 9 days. It blizzard. They essentially just awaited their death because they were only 11 miles from the base at this point. Wow. 11 miles from the base.
That's pretty close.
That's really close, but they couldn't leave. Every time they opened the door, there's actually a quote from his diary, from Scott's diary, Falcon Scott. What a badass name.
I don't know.
He shouldn't have gone out this way. On March 29th, Scott wrote, "Every day we have been ready to start for our depot 11 miles away, but outside the door of the tent, it remains a scene of whirling drift. We shall stick it out to the end, but we are getting weaker, of course, and the end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more."
And that was all he had left.
That's the last. We don't ever hear from him again.
Wow.
They find the 3 of them frozen in a tent.
Man.
Yeah.
That's a sad ending.
Yeah. For such a cool name, he should have had a little bit.
Exactly. Well,
they were probably dreaming of pemmican.
They probably were as they were huddled together. They probably saw each other as being pemmicans. Yeah. Because it's like when you're really hungry in those cartoons and like someone looks like a chicken leg or turkey leg. I'm surprised that they did. They were noble enough to not eat each other in the end.
Yeah, which is surprising. Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is like the scurvy and the dehydration and malnourishment.
Being cold.
Yeah, and cold. Yeah, exactly. It's not just the starvation.
Yeah, have you noticed how little, like even just in the past couple of days, it's been so cold. I'm like, I don't even want to like do like normal things. Get out of the car and put gas in it.
We were trying to like get our battery fixed in the car, but our hands were so cold that I like couldn't even do the wrench the other day or earlier today.
It feels ridiculous.
It just made me mad.
It's cold here right now, guys.
It is cold.
It's very cold.
Okay, so it looks like Amundsen made it to the South Pole first. Falcon Scott epically failed on the way back and died.
Yeah.
And Shackleton, what does he do?
Oh yeah, so Shackleton's like, okay, well, I can't be the first there. Everyone's making it before me. He already knows the Norwegian flag is there.
Right. I think he was a little late setting out or something.
Yeah, he was. So he decides he's going to do something else. He wants to trek across Antarctica.
That's still pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's like, I want to be the first person to trek all the way across. He even has 2 teams, one coming from the south or from the South America, and the other from
New Zealand, I think.
New Zealand.
So he's got to meet. He's going to meet them
where they're going to bring some extra food and stuff.
Right.
Which is wise because everyone keeps
very wise.
The food. Right?
Also wise to not bring ponies.
Yeah, he didn't bring ponies. The truth is though, he didn't even reach Antarctica proper. He was 100 miles away from land when his boat got froze.
Oh wow! It got stuck in the ice.
It got stuck in the ice, and it froze up. He couldn't. He couldn't get through any further.
They were like, did you see pictures of them trying to free the boat? Like they were out with like pickaxes and stuff trying to break through the ice.
They were like on essentially just like on land, really.
Right.
This was in 1914.
That's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, 1914. He left England under. They left England in 1914, and they planned to be at the base, and they were in Mamerto.
And his ship was called
the Endurance.
The Endurance.
Yeah,
what a fitting name.
Yeah. They got stuck.
And they couldn't free it because you could equip your boat with, I guess, like icebreaker, sort of like reinforcements or whatever to hopefully be able to steer it in a way that would break through small glaciers and ice that was forming. But if ice like got a hold of it, then you lose your momentum and ability to break through. And then you're just at the mercy of the like ebb and flow of the tides and the formation of the icebergs.
Yeah, exactly.
And if a winter is increasing, then you're not going to be able. Yeah,
they were like at first once the ship started, like once the Endurance was trapped in ice, they were adrift for 10 months before 10 months before the ice, like the ice was starting to crush it. They knew it was coming.
Because it's going to like give and expand and contract a little bit, and it's not going to be good for these wooden ships and holes.
During the winter, they're surviving storms and winters for like 6
What did they eat? They ate penguins, didn't they?
Yeah, they ate penguins. Yeah. Big old penguins. Mm-hmm. And seals. They did eventually have to choose to eat the dogs too. But that doesn't happen right away. So Shackleton realizes the ship is far too damaged. Even he tries tossing stuff for a while and seeing if maybe he can get the ship loose. Maybe they'll raise it above it. None of that works. He decides to abandon it.
That must be a tough decision because that's like your only way out a lot of the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Their sole focus, his sole focus is keep his men alive. They do take the lifeboats.
Which are small. They're not meant for the open ocean.
Yeah, they're just small boats. They're just small boats. But his whole mission now is keep his men alive.
Forget the South Pole. Yeah. It's turned into a survival thing.
They don't leave their ship right away, though. They kind of hang out for a while, but as it warms up and their ship crushes under the ice,
it sinks. Yeah.
They let that go. They're eating penguins, seals.
Imagine like the penguin genocide that happened. Like these penguins have probably like never seen people before. Yeah. And they probably like just walk up to them and they're like, hey, what is this? And then these people are just like slaughtering them and eating them.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. Terrible penguin genocide that occurred.
They have to start eating their dogs. They start
Poor dogs.
5 dogs and then a couple more. On March 30th, they finish their dogs. They don't have any more dogs left.
A lot of these trips, when they would bring dogs, they would bring them to where they would have babies like right at the opportune time on the trip because it would take so long to sail there and you had to wait for the summer and stuff like that, so that they would be in their prime. They would be born on the trip and then they would pull the sleds and stuff like that. Yeah. That was an interesting thing that you had to account for.
There was some officers that say that the dogs deserve to live more than some of the people.
I agree.
On this trip.
I agree with that.
It was and so they are just adrift on an iceberg for about 5 months. They finally escape in the little lifeboats to Elephant Island. And
how far away is Elephant Island?
It was like open ocean.
So it's like pretty close, probably.
It's close enough that these are little boats made it, but
there wasn't much there.
Yeah.
Right?
No, there wasn't much there. They were still surviving on seals.
Okay.
Yeah. And the crew,
Shackleton's going to decide that they're not going to get rescue from Elephant Island.
Yeah.
They're going to have to go get rescue themselves.
Yeah. So he takes just a few of them to South Georgia, which isn't.
That's further out into the open ocean. I would say South Georgia might be that big one that's like.
Yeah, right there.
Right in there or somewhere. I don't know. It's probably not. You can't see it on the map. The map doesn't have that many detail, but it's one of the larger ones.
Yeah.
And it has settlement.
And he does come back 4 months later for the rest of his crew.
He goes from South Georgia. Does he go to Chile or does he go to the mainland Argentina? Or does he go back from South Georgia?
It's back from South Georgia. And they have
to Elephant Island.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a Rose Sea party that is led by Macintosh, not spelled exactly the same.
Okay.
That sailed in the Aurora to come help them. This is crazy, but none of Shackleton's men died.
That's awesome, though.
Not one.
Yeah.
The rescue mission on the Aurora, led by Macintosh, 3 of them died. That's
unfortunate.
From that ship.
Macintosh.
None of Shackleton's people died. None of his crew.
Oh, so they weren't his guys that died.
No.
Okay.
It was the other.
That's strange. The ones that weren't stranded for a year in the outside of the Endurance.
Isn't that crazy?
They really had endurance, I would say.
Yeah, the Endurance, I think, like it led them to this like actually real endurance because they they survived. Like every one of them survived.
That's pretty awesome that no one died on the trip, and that today, the Endurance, since it sank to the bottom of the ocean, and the ocean is so cold in that area that divers and I guess submarine or whatever you go investigate these things with has found it preserved at the bottom of the ocean.
That's amazing.
And it's still in really good condition. You can read the word Endurance across the hull.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I want to say that at some point, the ice, released it from, I guess, because it was thawing because of the seasons or something like that. And at one point it was still buoyant. So it shot up to the surface. And then at that point It's sort of like how the Titanic did when it sank down. Yeah. And then it sank to its final resting place.
Is it that far down? Is it that?
It's really deep. Off the top of my head.
People can scuba dive to it?
No, not scuba dive. No. No, it's like a submersible sort of thing. Yeah. No, I want to say it's like a mile down probably. Yes, much better. That was the one that killed the billionaires, right? Yeah. That's how I remember it. In Falcon Scott's hut that we talked about that his group stayed at before they made their final push towards the South Pole, they found a fruit cake that was frozen solid in like one of the cabinets or whatever, and it was still in its original tin, and it was still in like edible condition after 100 years of being frozen in the Antarctic. That it wasn't even spoiled.
Not an unspoiled fruitcake.
I don't know if the company that made the fruitcake, because it was like from like a sealed tin from like a company in England, they had brought it from with them, because fruitcake traditionally like lasts a long time because the way that it's made. But that would make such a great commercial for that company if they were still around. Which is funny if the fruitcake outlasted the company itself.
Yeah.
Keeps forever.
Would you try that?
I would totally try it, dude.
Yeah. I often think of the ships that sink that have wine and then people pull up the wine. I would love to try that.
I bet that would be awesome.
Or frozen 100-year-old fruitcake.
Oh yeah.
But I think I heard that, the mammoth that they found, somebody ate some of that meat.
What?
That's like,
wait, they found a frozen mammoth?
Yeah, a whole one.
Oh, is that what they're using for the DNA when they're trying to like clone it and bring it back?
Yeah. That was real.
That's awesome. I wonder how expensive that steak was.
Yeah, right.
Who knows? People were
dry aged.
It definitely is. People were signing up to drink the liquid that they found in like this sarcophagus in Egypt. That was like a body in a tomb, and it was submerged in this like mysterious red liquid. People online were like, "Let me drink it. I want to get the powers that the ancient pharaohs had." And I'm like, I don't know if you need to drink this mysterious red liquid.
Honey lasts a long time.
Yes,
you can eat thousands and thousands of year old honey.
There's also that.
I wish I could eat more old things.
Me too. We should send us some old things. We'll eat them.
We'll eat them on camera.
I drank a Coke one time that was from like the year I was born. It was from like 1990 or something. There was a commemorative Coca-Cola that people had, and I drank it, and it was
taste
slimy.
It's like, I would drink a whiskey that's our age.
That'd probably be a lot better.
Yeah, well, it would be
because that's like intentional.
Yeah, not slimy.
I think I drank someone's like special.
Was it bubbly at all?
No, it was pretty flat. Flat, slimy Coke.
Ew.
Put that in their commercial.
Coca-Cola, flat and slimy.
So it's kind of surprising that Shackleton's expedition, even though it didn't end in success, that it did not end in the disaster of them all dying. Falcon Scott's did.
No one died. And that was an intense trip.
Oh yeah, because there's Antarctica is like Mount Everest. There's a 0% chance that's pretty high that you're going to die just going there anyway at this time.
Yeah.
Not in modern day necessarily, like there probably is, but at this time it's the corners of the map that aren't explored.
Yeah.
Where you might not return.
Yeah.
And you have to think about a little bit about how the conditions affect your psychology of being. My bad. It's because you have this darkness, you have the whiteout sort of thing where you go outside and you can't tell.
So scary living up in place like that.
I've never experienced a whiteout before because I've never really been in a place with snow, but it's supposed to be like really disorienting and not being able to see the ground from the sky.
And yeah, the sun's so bright and the ground is reflecting that. It seems crazy. And
combine that with being isolated.
Right.
It's got to like wreak havoc on your nerves, and you can't always just escape from your like station or whatever, or your platoon, whoever the guys that you're with, and say, "Oh, I'm done here. I'm just gonna go.
I'm just gonna go home now."
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna go to the pub, get some fish.
Can I get another assignment and leave these guys behind? So we talked about how like alcoholism is a big problem in
Antarctica.
In Antarctica, yeah, and there's a lot of instances where the conditions kind of like get to these people who are not, that you don't know if you're built of the stuff that can handle being isolated until you are.
Yeah.
So you get down there and you're like, oh, well, I'm just a scientist or whatever. But are you a scientist that can do it in this like dark, confined environment that you're not used to with the same people who you don't know? And it can kind of like cause extreme circumstances to bubble to the surface a lot of the time. And there's a lot of instances where the cold and the isolation got to people and bad things happened to them. I want to talk about a couple of those now.
It's because I actually didn't read about this.
I watched some videos called like The Dark Side of Antarctica, and it had a bunch of like facts like this and like small anecdotes. But a couple of them that stood out to me were that in, let's see, so one of the
this is dark, you know.
No, so I mean, it's just dumb stuff. Like one of like the really small ones is that at some Russian station that chess is now banned. You can't play chess anymore because after a heated chess match that these guys stabbed each other, and now you're not allowed to have chess there because it gets out of control. Because you have to think about how the alcoholism like affects these people as well as the isolation. And they're drinking a lot and they're playing chess and they get mad. There was another good Russian story.
Usually, if I'm drinking and I'm playing a game,
we're having a good time.
Yeah, I'm actually okay with losing when I'm drinking. I'm like,
me too. Because if you're drinking, you're winning.
Yeah,
really.
You're drinking, you're winning.
Even if you're not really winning. There was another Russian incident that happened. And you think that the Russians would be kind of good at this just because of like they come from Russia, but evidently they're not. Where
Southern Hemisphere really disoriented.
These two Russian guys were at this one station, and the station had like a library where you could check out books to help pass the time. And this one guy was checking out books, and his like colleague or whatever kept spoiling the end of the books for him.
Jeez.
And he would be like, "Oh well, everybody dies at the end of that one," or it was all a dream, something like that. You know what I mean?
Always ruining.
Yeah, he was always ruining the end. So the guy got mad and he stabbed him.
Everyone's stabbing everyone.
Yes, exactly. That's like the most Russian thing that I've heard of. And maybe this is why they have the alcohol allotment that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I was thinking about the alcohol allotment. Okay, so first, before you go into any more of these, would you choose the 18 beers, 3 bottles of wine, or 1 bottle of liquor?
1 bottle of liquor.
What kind of liquor would you choose?
Vodka.
Vodka? Wow.
Maybe. I don't know. What's the highest percentage? Bacardi 151. Do they make that?
I think I'd probably...
I'm not choosing the beer. It's between the wine and the liquor.
Yeah, you're not choosing the
I'm not choosing the beer.
The beer could be really warm for that time. A lot of calories.
I'm not thinking about the calories when I'm drinking, Jesse.
Okay.
Are you thinking about the calories when you're drinking?
No, but like if I'm in a cold winter place, maybe I want more calories.
Maybe, but then you just want your alcohol blanket on. You know how like when you drink and then you don't feel cold anymore because you've been drinking.
I'd get whiskey.
Yeah.
I'd do whiskey.
I could see that. Whiskey sounds like a good thing to have.
Yeah. Anyways, tell us some more.
Let's see. So there was this incident that happened that really caused like an international debacle. Since Antarctica has the Antarctica Treaty that we talked about earlier and how it's divided up amongst all these countries, that kind of causes some jurisdiction issues when things go wrong.
Really?
Yeah, because it's like, oh, well, who's going to investigate if there's a crime? Do you investigate based on who's claimed the territory, whose base it is, the nationality of the person, or the nationality of like the perpetrators or whatever. And so this all came to a head in 2000. We see the complications that arise from this kind of situation is that there was this guy named Rodney Marks, who is an Australian national, and he was working at a science station in Antarctica. And he was like supposedly like a well-liked guy or whatever. He was a scientist. He played music and people liked him in general.
He probably went to the coffee shop that became a wine.
You think he's the wine bar, coffee shop kind of guy?
Yeah. He sounds like it.
His girlfriend was there with him. I think that they might have been engaged. She transferred or whatever, like to get the assignment so they could be there together. And
That's cute.
it is cute.
Let's go live in now.
Yeah, together. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'll follow you anywhere, baby. All right.
Follow me.
Prove it. So one night he started complaining of like stomach pains, and he went to see the physician that they had on their base. And I don't think that this was the McMurdo one. I think that this was a smaller one. Maybe I could be wrong. It could have been the McMurdo one. I don't know. But the doctor didn't have the ability to communicate with the mainland to get like a second opinion because of the conditions of the weather were affecting the radio. And so he was just like, just go rest and hopefully you'll feel better in a few hours. And so Rodney goes and like lays down or whatever, and his like stomach pain was getting worse. And he's like, well, that was not a real solution. So let's go back and
on it isn't actually helping.
No, it's getting worse. And so he goes to see the doctor again. And I want to say that the doctor might have given him like a sedative or something then, because he had to like take some kind of action or whatever. And but he really wasn't sure what to do because he didn't have like the proper way to diagnose it, or it wasn't his expertise. Like he's there for like the kind of incidences that you would have.
You have a cold.
Things like that. And so it turned out that his symptoms didn't go away. And I want to say in the middle of the night, he ended up going back to the doctor for the third time. And the doctor gave him an injection of something called like Halidol, I want to say. And this, I don't think it was an antipsychotic. I want to say it was like just like another kind of sedative or something. It was just supposed to calm him down because he was starting to like freak out from the condition getting worse and like not getting better. And it being like a very strange, like acute sort of thing, like that the doctor wasn't aware of. Like if it had been like appendicitis or something like that was happening around his stomach, then the doctor would have known what that was and would be able to like operate on it probably. But because the doctor didn't know, was like feeding into his paranoia about it or his anxiety. And he seemed like he was getting better for a few hours after he had received the injection from the doctor. But then by the next morning he was dead. And there was like this big cover up that happened because they didn't want to, this base that it was located at was ran by the company Raytheon, and they're one of these like big defense contractors here in America. And of course they don't want this on their record books of it happening at their station. So they tried to like sweep it under the rug, and they used this like international gray area of it being in Antarctica, but at this base run by this American company, but it's an Australian national and blah, 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 like all this stuff. And he was even, because he was an Australian national, but he had a passport. His passport was from like New Zealand. Either he was from New Zealand and it was Australian passport, but one of the ways or the other. Anyway, it was like a big thing where they weren't able to do a proper autopsy until like 9 months later.
Jeez. On
him. And it had to be, his body had to be taken back to the mainland somewhere, and they found out that he had been poisoned with an overdose of methanol. And methanol is like a cleaner that's kind of akin to alcohol, like chemically, but it's not for ingesting. But if you had taken like a wine glass size serving of it would be enough to kill somebody. And I think it was like 150 milliliters or whatever would have caused his condition, that the reason that he died.
Wow.
But they think that there's no way that he could have possibly confused the methanol for alcohol and like drank it on accident, and that he had some mysterious like puncture marks somewhere on his body that suggested that someone might have injected him with methanol to kill him on purpose.
Wow.
So it was like a murder. And but you also have like this, one of the this suspicious things about the case is that the doctor in the doctor's office, they had this machine that was specifically for diagnosing problems with like blood related things, like this was. It was like specifically for emergencies like this one. But the machine would, if you turned it off and turned it back on again, it would have to recalibrate itself, and it was just like a big pain to recalibrate it. Yeah. It would take like 9 hours or something like that for it to like go through its calibration process. So they didn't turn it on a lot, and they just like let the batteries die or like let the machine go out of service or something like that. So it was not operable at this time. And why they did not just like leave the machine on at all times so it stayed calibrated was a mystery. And why did the doctor inject him with this antipsychotic sedative or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And they didn't require the people who worked there to fill out like a questionnaire or whatever to like give testimony about like this guy. So it seems like foul play happened and that he was murdered and that no one wants to talk about it.
Yeah, this just like leaves a lot of room for mystery.
Yeah, they just said it was like natural causes.
That's not natural.
No, definitely not.
You don't accidentally take that much methane.
Yeah. So no one was ever like convicted or like charged for his murder, and that was in 2000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so recent.
Yes, and so not everything necessarily has to be foul play that happens in Antarctica psychologically. Another interesting incident was in May of 1965. There was this physicist named Carl Dish, and he worked at it was called like the radio noise station, I guess, where they picked up radio waves or whatever. I'm not sure what they did there at the radio noise station. I'm just making this up, but he was supposed to follow this like handrail thing. You know how they would like string a like a line, like a wire or something from like post to post to help you navigate during a storm.
Yeah.
And you would just grab it, and if you were lost,
I didn't know that. I just said, yeah, of course, as if I bet.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, that should make sense.
Yeah, so if there was a storm like a blizzard or something, you'd be able to just follow the hand line, and you'd be able to make your way back to where you were going. And he had followed this specific route 25 times before, but on this day, on May 8th, 1965, he went out into the storm to follow the handrail, and he disappeared, and they never found him again. So,
well, that sucks.
Yeah, exactly. So like
a Yeti ate him.
Maybe did he just like say I'm too cool to follow like the hand line?
Following the hand line.
I don't know.
Bigfoot, a Yeti,
UFO abduction.
Yeah, I know there's UFO stuff about
there is. I'm gonna get to that in a second. I've got one more mysterious.
Good. Because I was
thing
to hear something about that because I know nothing of it
about UFO stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. I got some stuff coming up. As most recently as 2016, there were these, I want to say 3 guys that were in a small outpost in Antarctica. They weren't part of like a big settlement there, and they were hunkering down for the storm that was happening. And this one guy, I guess he was suffering from, I don't know, like you get cabin fever or whatever, and he wanted to just go out in it to get back.
He's like, I just need to go.
Yeah, he was like, I just need to go, and he got up and left. And he didn't come back, but they couldn't go out and look for him because of the storm. So like 2 days later, the storm subsided and they go outside to see what happened to him because he didn't come back. And 100 steps from the entrance to the outpost, they see him in the distance, and it looks like he's just like frozen in place. But as they get closer to him, they realize that it's not his body. It's just his clothes standing upright by themselves, like his shirt, jacket, and stuff like that, and his pants, and they're just frozen there on the ground, and his boots, and his body is not in them at all.
What?
I don't. Okay, so if you experience,
clothes are just standing.
His clothes are just standing there, frozen by themselves. Yeah,
and his body is just poof, gone. Poof. This is not there.
So apparently, if you experience hypothermia, there's this thing that happens that I've heard of before called paradoxical undressing. And it's like during your like last moments of being too cold, your body will release some sort of chemical or something like that to like try to warm you up or to make you think that you're warmer. And during that moment, that a lot of people who are freezing to death will take off all their clothes because they think that they're overheating. They're already like past like the delusional sort of stage. And they're like, oh man, well, I'm fine now. I feel great. I'm going to take off my clothes. And so you'll find some hypothermia victims without their clothes, but that does not explain why they were standing upright on their own.
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit of like the insta freeze of what we're seeing on the boat Jenny.
Oh, but yeah, the Jenny. Mm-hmm.
Because the body's just disappeared here. This is very weird.
That is very weird. I don't think there was any explanation for that, but I did see a photo.
Did I ever see him again?
No, he was never found again. I saw a picture of the clothes though. I
There's
think
a picture of the clothes, but he is just gone.
no, there's like no body in the clothes. It's just the clothes.
No one's stripping down naked, making sure their clothes are wet enough to freeze and putting them up.
I can't confirm or deny that part of it, but
It's all work.
yeah, it's possible. I don't know.
But he just faked his death.
You can't believe everything you see online.
Wait, what?
That's funny.
Guys, you can't believe everything we say.
Exactly. That's why we're legends and libations, though. So you want UFOs?
I want UFOs.
Okay. Well, you have come to the right place, Jesse, because I've got UFOs for you.
I have no UFO. I have some stuff about potential like UFOs, but not really.
That's okay, because I got UFOs. Don't worry. All right. So there have been a couple of, I want to say, whistleblowers.
Whistleblowers, yeah.
Yeah, who have come forward with some classified experiences or instances that they have experienced while doing missions in Antarctica. And a couple of them that I thought were the most interesting were, this was in the 80s. This was in like 87, I want to say. But this guy, and he goes by the name Brian, and
is that an unusual name to go by?
No, that I think that might be a pseudonym. That might, or like he doesn't want you to know his whole name. He's just going by Brian. So he was tasked with I think he was like military or something like that, and his objective was to rescue this person from, there was an injury that had occurred on a science station somewhere, and they needed to be airlifted out, and time was of the essence. So he was in his plane, and the most direct route to the station where this person was injured was through a no-fly zone.
Yeah.
And apparently there's like several no-fly zones set up in Antarctica for
too many of them.
Yes, a suspicious amount of no-fly zones.
For a country where hardly anyone is.
There's a lot of no-fly zones. And it was important that he reach this guy in time, so he said, we're just going to ignore the no-fly zone, and we're just going to go straight through. To do the quickest route is the straight line between 2 points.
Won't they shoot you down if you go through the no-fly zone?
If it's over the White House, yes, but if it's over some random place in Antarctica, probably not.
They probably don't care as much.
Yeah, they don't care. It's not being policed as much. So he flies over the no-fly zone, and he looks down at the Antarctic surface that's normally covered by ice and snow, and he sees what kind of looks like a sinkhole. That's it's sort of like a cone, like an upside down cone that's being funneled into this one point, and where the point is like a hole, and it's like a hole that just like descends straight into the surface. It's black, and you can't see what's in the hole. And the on the map, or like on his like equipment or whatever, this was supposed to be the atmospheric measuring station or something vague like that.
Yeah.
An air sampling station. That's what it was. And so he flies through that. He sees the hole in the ice, and he rescues the guy or whatever. But on the way back, they don't fly. Oh no. On the way back, I want to say they fly right back through the no-fly zone, and the guy survived. And afterwards, they took Brian aside, and they were like, why did you violate the no-fly zone mandate? And he was like, well, if I had taken 30 more minutes or so to fly around it, then the guy would have died. And they were pretty much like, what you saw never happened, and you can't tell anybody about this, and you must be sworn to secrecy over this like hole in the ice that he saw for some reason. And apparently, like a few months later, he heard people talking about mysterious things that were happening at the air sampling station. So I guess they were violating their non-disclosure agreement about it. But I thought that was a cool story.
It's a weird one.
I don't know why I said that had to do with UFOs, but it didn't.
It's weird. I'll give it that. Something's happening.
Sorry.
But there is no UFOs.
No, I'm sorry. My bad. Okay, I've been drinking. I don't know why I had that labeled as a UFO story. Okay. All right.
I want a freaking UFO story.
I'm actually, to be honest, my second UFO story doesn't have anything to do with UFOs either. I don't know why I wrote these down as UFO story. Okay, well, I mean, there's always like your vague, like lights in the sky and like I saw a disc or whatever like story, but there's not necessarily concrete evidence that goes afterward.
Like
a
hole in the ground with the cone and okay.
But they threatened me afterwards and said that I couldn't talk about it.
I love when they do that.
Me too. Okay, because that was the lead up to this better one though. I've got a good one now. I promise.
No UFOs though.
No UFOs. I literally have UFOs written in my notes right here. Okay, so in 2003, this guy who was a Navy SEAL, he was on the SEAL team. And
SEAL team?
Yeah, he was on the SEAL team.
Can you imagine if that's your like mascot, a SEAL?
I don't know why they call them SEALs. Why don't they call them Navy SEALs? Because SEAls live in the sea.
I'm sure it's like an
acronym.
Maybe
because if you were like naming like the most hardcore thing in the sea, then it would be like a shark or like a killer whale or something like that.
Narwhals.
Yeah, that doesn't roll off the tongue as well though. It sounds more fanciful.
Sharknadoes.
There we go. There's a basketball team for you. So this guy, he was on the SEAL team, and they were supposed to go extract to this scientist from this area who was like supposedly doing like climate change research or something like that. And he's like, well, okay, well, we're not usually in the business of extracting scientists from nowhere in Antarctica that aren't under threat for anything.
That's not a normal day.
No.
It's not a normal Tuesday.
But, you know, you just got to like accept the mission when it comes to you because you're in Antarctica and you probably want to be there. Because
you're probably a little bored.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want some missions because everyone's looking at soil samples.
I'm pretty sure in the military that you don't get sent to Antarctica unless you want to go. I think that it's one of those easy to reject assignments, or like you don't have to.
Do you do it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think it'd be cool. Yeah.
Become friends with like the 12 people that are with you.
Exactly. Or get murdered by them.
Ice shanks.
No evidence.
And melts away right away.
Okay, so this the SEAL team guy, his pseudonym was a little cooler than Brian's. He wants to be called Spartan 1.
Damn, he plays Halo.
He must play Halo. 2003.
Yeah,
that's about the time that Halo was coming out. Yeah,
Spartan 1 comes out.
That's hilarious.
It's not Brian. He's Spartan 1.
All right, so Spartan 1 gets to the coordinates. He lands the helicopter or whatever that they were in, and from the sky before they landed, he spots this like black octagon structure in the ice.
I hate when they do that.
I know these black octagons. People leaving their black octagons everywhere.
So rude.
But it was like a pretty large black octagon. Like it was obviously like the outside of like a building or something. And so he's approaching this black octagon, and he gets up close to it with his team, and he sees that it's a door. But the door is humongous. It's 23 feet high. And somehow I don't know how he knows this, but the door is 18 feet thick, which doesn't make sense, really.
You know that?
I don't know. But how do you
have an 18-foot
thick door? It'd just be like a big like cube or whatever. But he said But he said that it was like perfectly balanced to where it like didn't have hinges or like whatever. It had specifically purposefully built hinges for this thing, like not traditional hinges that we think of. And you were able to just put your hand up against it and it would just slide back like effortlessly. So it was just balanced on this thing. And I guess
weight just the effort.
I don't know. I guess they had the WD-40 on these hinges and it was just like, whoo, look at that. And so this is like 18-foot thick, massive door slides open, and he finds himself inside this hallway of this massive room. And this room is 9 acres large and has no support structures.
I have a hard time finding out what an acre is.
An acre is, man, I didn't even have the conversion thing written down for you. But
I know I used to live on quite a few acres, but
my bad. It's 7 football fields long.
Okay, thank you for teaching me acres.
That's not an official conversion, but I did write that. Yeah, because that doesn't tell you how wide it was. But this was like a hallway, like hangar type room with no support structures at all. It's just like one long thing that's 7.5 or 7 football fields long, and it's illuminated by this lime green light.
Oh, that's cool.
That's coming from nowhere. It seems like it's emanating from like both under the walls and at the top of like the ceiling, but it's like you have a light hidden behind a cabinet or something. You can't see the source of it or the bulb, but it's just like an ambient light that permeates everywhere.
Oh, that's cool.
So it takes him and his team like 15 minutes to traverse the length of this 7 football field long room. And
Sounds like a dwarven ruin.
yeah, and in the light on the walls, he sees inscribed these like hieroglyphic type writing, but it was not Egyptian hieroglyphics and not like Mesopotamian or like Mesoamerican type hieroglyphics. Apparently he was able to like identify that in the moment, but it was some kind of other type. Yeah, he's like a
He just knows.
he's an ancient linguist on the side when he's not being part of the SEAL team. So he sees all this like mysterious writing, and they're walking down the room, and at the end they find the scientist or whoever they were looking for, and they see they ask him how big this place is, because he's been taking pictures supposedly of like the writing and the size of the structure, and he says that there's this ramp, or they see this ramp that's descending even further into like lower levels at the end of the room, and
Don't do it. Don't do it.
you can't see the ramp from far away.
God.
The room creates like an optical illusion to where it's kind of hidden until you're right up on it, and then they see it like drop down into the depths.
Oh, yeah.
And they ask the scientist like, how big is this place? And he says that it probably covers over 62 acres. So they're only like scratching the surface of it being in this one room.
Jeez.
But they decide not to go down to the lower levels. They just like take the scientist back, and they debrief him or whatever, and they tell the guy not to talk about it. But he gave an interview where his like voice was all garbled, and his picture was obscured, but he talks about this experience that he had, and says that on the inside of the door was this symbol that looked like a oh man, I have it written down right here. It was like a pyramid, but with an X through it. And the same symbol appeared on a coin that was discovered in 1990 in Mexico, had also this pyramid with a cross through it. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
This feels very like Lovecraftian.
Yes, it does. Like you're going to find like a monster down here or something.
Yeah. Like there's not much, but like it's known that like Lovecraft, like absolutely, like he was obsessed with Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote one book particularly, The Mountains of Madness, that take place in Antarctica.
Heard of that?
Yeah. It's just a short read. 150 pages or something.
Did you read it?
No.
We didn't read it. It's okay, guys.
We didn't read it. We read the Spark Notes.
Always read the Spark Notes.
It's not really a big main thing on this, but there he writes the whole thing from the perspective of a genealogist named William Dreyer.
William Dreyer?
Yeah, but it's all as a geologist, so it's all about rocks and stuff. And he's studying, or he's trying to prevent scientific adventures to Antarctica. He's like, hey, this can't happen.
He's trying to prevent them?
Yeah, because it's not good.
Why would he want to prevent them?
Because they already went on one, and they found these things called the Elder Things.
The Elder Things?
Yeah, there's these weird creatures. So like, in a book, they find these ancient ruins of a city in Antarctica, which that does beg the question: has there ever been a civilization?
Right,
And
because there wasn't always the ice there
Yeah,
cover the
exactly.
surface.
In the city, the ruins tell stories of slaves that took over, the creatures that were originally authoritative, but also of some great evil but beyond on the mountains a little further away. And
The evil lurked in the mountains.
it ends with him like looking back and seeing that evil, but never really describes what that evil is.
Okay.
But here in these creatures that it talks about, these elder things, they're literally called elder things. They're supposed to be the first race of creatures on Earth. And they have like, their faces look like starfish, and then they look like almost like squids.
Yeah.
With tentacles.
Like
and
Davy
wings.
Jones sort of things. Yeah.
And they have wings. They're very weird. They have like a face that literally is like a starfish. And then it becomes a squid body with wings around it so it can fly.
It's so hard to imagine.
There's great pictures of it. You should definitely look up elder things and then put a picture onto our video. And then they have tentacles on the bottom. And these are they have 5 lobes for a brain.
How many lobes do we have?
2.
Oh, okay. That's significantly more.
So they're apparently very intelligent, but they ruined their own society. And then there was this kind of overlooming, almost Cthulhu kind of creature in the distance in the mountains beyond. He was very obsessed with it. He liked that people were researching it. But the interesting thing is that's all told from like the scientific point of view, the geologist, which I think hasn't changed. Because like if you're going to tell a crazy story about Antarctica, it's going to be coming from nerds.
Right. It has
like
to.
researchers who are like, look at these soil samples. I found an alien.
It's either that or the military people who are sent there to protect them or whatever, or extract them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you think that he got the inspiration for these things?
I'm listening to your stories. I'm like, it feels like it's very natural to like onto these same concepts. Like Antarctica is vast.
It is.
It's huge, and it's like a wasteland with so much potential for life underneath it.
And it's mysterious. If you think about some of the life that's underneath it, we talked earlier about the mapping of the subglacial terrain, and they have discovered in modern times using like ground penetrating radar and stuff like that, that there are subglacial lakes that are still liquid.
Wow.
Under the surface of the ice.
Under the
ice, because the pressure of the ice keeps the lakes in liquid form instead of from freezing.
Pressure that keeps
it's so big that it can't freeze. And the largest of one of these is called Lake Vostok. And that sounds like a Russian name to you. Then that is true, because it's the Russians that are in charge of the base over Lake Vostok. And there is a great story, I want to say, not a scientific account, but there's a story of what happened when they drilled to see if they could get samples from the Lake Vostok. And they had an ice drill, and they bored down as far as they could until they broke through into the liquid that was there. And supposedly it ended up like releasing this, what they called organism 46B.
Organism 46B.
Yes.
That sounds like this is just like what I just read.
Right, exactly. So organism 46B was supposedly this huge 33-foot long, 14 tentacled squid.
Wow, these are very similar, actually.
Exactly.
And a little bit bigger.
It was 4 kilometers down, is where the Lake Vostok was. I'm not great at miles, but I want to say that's like 1.5 miles. So they drilled that far into the depths, and they released this creature that supposedly possessed this like psychic type ability or whatever, which is kind of,
this is very Lovecraftian.
It reminds me of the Lovecraftian example that you just gave us. And
that's weird.
It was able to like infect the minds of the Russians at the station and ended up like killing everybody there. And this was one of like the instances of the disappearing scientists. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But organism 46B kind of reminds me of this other story that I want to tell you about, because I ran across this anecdote from this YouTube video that I was watching, and it was about how there was a virus that had been released from the ice in this Norwegian station, and this virus was carried from the Norwegian station by a dog to this American station nearby, and had infected everybody at the American station as well, and had just ended up was like killing everybody there, because it was something that they were just like not used to before, because it had been dormant for thousands of years. And I looked everywhere for this story, and I was like, man, where can I find some details about this awesome story? And it turns out that this was the plot of the movie called The Thing. And I had just like fallen for somebody's trolling and thought that this was a real story. But
you just got me.
I know.
Like, I just literally, like, I remember The Thing.
I'd never seen it before.
That's so good, isn't it?
I watched, Casey and I watched it, and it was awesome. I was like, it has Kurt Russell in it, and it's from 1982, and it has very much has that style, though, but it has some real suspense in The Thing where you like don't know who is infected and you don't know who's real and who's not.
Yeah.
And it has that psychological element to it.
Oh, it's so good.
Brought along by their isolation in Antarctica and they're drinking a lot. And I want to go out on a limb and say that it has the best monster that I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, right.
The monster blew my mind. It was like a master class of practical effects. Like it wasn't like green screen, like CGI. It was like they actually had models that they were stop motion photography and are doing something to like make this really elaborate monster. So check it out if you've never seen The Thing. It holds up really well, even though it's almost 40 years old now.
Yeah. They tried making a new one. I don't know how the new one was.
I saw that one when I was looking for it and I didn't click on it.
Yeah, you went straight to the old one.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that one's a remake of another one though that's like from the 50s or so. So like it was obviously a thing of The Thing. That was
Thing was a thing. Yeah.
You know, it must be a good story though when it's on its third iteration. Who knows though? All right, so we pretty much talked about.
Could you just say that we could have even talked about everything because it's a whole continent.
Right, exactly. And I thought you were going to say the one thing we didn't talk about was the drink.
So Coors Banquet obviously is connected in two ways to our work, right?
Yes, because it's the beer that they serve at the station.
Yep, and it's where all the flat earthers meet in Denver, right?
It's funny that they meet there.
Yeah, right? Out of all places.
I wonder what the reasoning is behind that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, this is not a flat Earth podcast, nor will it ever be.
Yeah, nor will it ever be. But I did think it was a funny look. I actually didn't realize that connection until after we started.
Sometimes we just make the connection along the way.
Yeah, but the real connection was that everyone at the base has to drink this, and in general, it's a decent beer. It's like a really regular beer, though.
It's about as normal as it gets, I think.
Like, yeah, it's.
I wouldn't want to drink anything more normal than this, but I don't dislike it.
Yeah, it's like, honestly, like I'm gonna leave it like at a 6. Easy to drink. You'll please the crowd, but you won't impress the crowd.
Exactly. It's a safe bet.
It's a safe bet. Like if you need to get beer for a good group of people, this is a refreshing beer.
I agree, because I feel like if you went down a step from this, you'd be disappointing people.
Yeah.
But if you went up a step, then you'd be getting into the realm of
craft.
Some people might not like the kind of beer that you do choose.
Like you're choosing something that's not really like the beer that they like.
This is like the American Dos Equis.
Yeah.
Because like I put that Dos Equis, everybody likes this, but it's not at the bottom.
It's not either. At the bottom.
Yeah, it's not at the top. Yeah.
It's like this is like so middle ground, and I get it. It's middle ground,
middle America,
between the North and the South Pole, between Arctic and between
the Arctic and the Antarctic.
Yeah, jeez,
it's so confusing.
Yeah.
So
one of the things that we usually somehow I always feel like we have like some kind of conspiracy that comes into these stories, and there must be some conspiracies around Antarctica.
You mean besides the aliens and
besides the aliens that have no UFOs.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah,
there are generic UFO stories, Jesse. I will let you go look at those yourself. There are several. There's this interesting thing about how there is a station near the South Pole because the atmosphere is more thin there at the very bottom of the world, and they can measure cosmic rays at this station at the South Pole because they have a good visibility for it.
Yeah.
And normally they're measuring these cosmic rays coming into the station, but in I think it was like 2016 or so, they noticed that cosmic rays were actually emanating out from underneath. Yeah, me too. I hate when my cosmic rays are just emanating out. Yes,
I hate when they do that.
Yes, they're just stay in their hollow earth. but the cosmic rays, it was like an anomaly, and they didn't know where they were coming from. And it turned out that there was this void that was causing a gravitational anomaly. Somewhere like it's not at the very bottom of the South Pole. It's like off center somewhere, like into the unremarkable landscape, but it's causing this gravitational anomaly, which means that the gravity is weaker at this one spot. Because if they use these gravitational anomalies to detect things like mineral deposits and stuff like that, if the gravity is stronger at this area, it means that the minerals underneath the surface are more dense and they are causing more gravity. But less gravity means there's a void, and there's something that's causing there to be less gravity. And so there's a void that is like, I think is like 2 or 3 miles, underneath the surface. And it causes, they're not able to measure what the cause of the gravitational anomaly is. So like the scientists are speculating what could possibly be the reason for it. And I want to come back to that later because I think I have it figured out.
Okay.
So stay tuned to the very end to find out the reason for the gravitational anomaly.
Already a long
podcast.
Long podcast, but wait a little longer.
Wait a little bit longer. Okay.
Certainly, there's always these like little conspiracies, and I feel positive. All of these like explorers were happening before the Nazis, and I only can imagine that the Nazis have to get involved.
Oh, most definitely. Because what is the episode?
They always love getting involved in everything.
What is a story without some Nazi involvement? I literally have written in my notes, it said, I know you are all wondering where the Nazis come into this story. And we haven't even mentioned them at all.
We haven't mentioned the Nazis, but here they are.
So you may have heard that after World War II that some of the Nazi high officials escaped to Argentina in a submarine.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And that the skull of supposedly the person who they think was Hitler who committed suicide in the bunker was actually the skull of a female, and it was not Eva Braun's skull either. That Hitler actually was one of the ones that escaped on a U-boat to Argentina as well.
Oh, I've never heard that one.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that like this is me not speculating. This is me talking like from things that I remember. Is that I did not research, things that I knew before, is that Russia escaped with the body of Hitler immediately after the war, and that we never got to see it. Oh. I don't think that it was able to be like verified and like examined by scientists on the Allies side, minus Russia. I think that it was all like, we believe what you say because you're our friends right now. Or whatever. We don't know if we're gonna have the Cold War for 40 years after this.
Yeah.
So when you say that this is Hitler that killed himself, that
we just trust.
Yes, I think that that's what happened. Put an asterisk beside that, but I think that we were going on their word for that, and that when they did actually finally release the documents or whatever, that ended up not being Hitler's skull at all. So
hate when people give me a different skull.
I know, the wrong skull.
Damn it.
I had a skull, and I thought about putting a skull back here for our prop with the ship, but I didn't think about the tie-in until right now.
You would have thought about, people would have been thinking, is this Hamlet?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Argentina. Argentina is one of the countries that's closest to Antarctica.
Very close.
And
nearly touching it, according to the map. Almost.
Exactly, with the peninsula, with the peninsula sticking out there.
Yeah, right.
Some people think that Argentina was not the final destination for the Nazi high officials, in that it was actually a stepping stone on their way to their Nazi secret base that was built in Antarctica. And I can give you a little bit of reason to believe that that might be the case.
Okay, tell me.
Okay, so in 1936, pre-World War II, Hitler was coming to power, and he realized that he was probably going to cause like an international conflict pretty soon, and that he didn't want German supply lines to be cut off from the rest of the world, or like if they were cut off, he wanted Germany to be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And apparently one of the big things that was like going gangbusters in pre-Nazi Germany, or like proto-Nazi Germany, was margarine. Fat-based products like margarine.
Yeah.
They love their margarine. put it on
We get that.
bread,
Yeah.
toast, scones, things like that.
All the
baked potatoes. I don't know, margarine. It was all the rage. They could not stand to possibly have any disruption in their supply of margarine.
I do hate the idea of losing it.
So in 1936, he appoints Hermann Göring is in charge of the German Fat Plan. That's what it's called.
What?
The German Fat Plan, because
German Fat Plan.
yes, so we need to keep all of Germany fat is what the plan was. Actually, that wasn't what it was, but it was we need to keep fats flowing to Germany to make margarine and other fat-based things.
Okay.
And one of the big things that you could make margarine with was whale oil. And where do you find whales? That we know of is in the Southern Ocean outside of Antarctica. So they sent an expedition in 1938. The ship was called the Schwabenland. It had 82 crew members, and and it had 82 crew members, and allegedly that some of them were like Nazi officials, whatever, scientists, and members of the Fuel Society.
Wow.
Have we heard of the Fuel Society before? And it's these people who I want to say they probably have ties to Helena Blavatsky, who we talked about before. And these ancient civilizations believe that the Aryans were this race that originated from thousands of years ago, possibly Atlantis, and they want to find direct evidence in Antarctica that the Aryan race in Nazi Germany is like the chosen people of old, and that is their divine right to rule because they have this ancient bloodline.
These guys are obsessed with this.
They are obsessed with this. And I mean, you see that with them trying to find like the Spear of Destiny and
we got to do an episode on that.
Yeah, Spear of Destiny. We got to do one. That was not the only thing. Like they were into all kinds of the occult stuff.
Not the goblin. Not the
I know what you're trying to say.
What is that?
The cup of the Last Supper is what I want to say, but that's not what it is.
Chalice?
Holy Grail.
Holy Grail. There it is, the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail. That's it. Okay. I'm definitely cutting some of that out. Okay.
Don't cut too much out. That's too good.
We caught autism right there. Temporary autism.
It was the banquet.
It was the banquet.
Banquet speaking to us.
Yes. Our brain cells were not having a banquet. God. Okay. Yes. So Germany was obsessed with these things, and they were finding anything that could possibly give them a leg up in the war. And that's why they had these guys aboard this vessel, because they wanted to find this. But the official story is that they were there for the German Fat Plan to keep the margarine flowing.
Because we need to keep the margarine flowing.
But apparently in reality, or the official story is that the mission didn't go that great, and that they were like ill prepared for the troubles of the Antarctic. And a funny story is that one time they had a catapult on their boat, and it could launch these like planes into the air because it was able to like give them enough force to take off, but the planes had to return back to the ship. They weren't able to like take off and land on the land by themselves. They had to use the catapult to take off. And they were running out of fuel in one of these like little reconnaissance missions where they were like mapping the surface of Antarctica, and in order to lighten the load on their ship, they were looking for things to throw out to like make the weight lighter, and they threw out these like hundreds of little metal swastikas that they brought with them, because their plan was to like have these swastikas like mark the boundaries of their territory in Antarctica.
Jeez.
They had taken like thousands of little metal swastikas with them for this sole purpose of dropping them on the ground to denote their territory. That was one of the silliest things that I've ever heard.
Germany doesn't own any of Antarctica.
Exactly. But officially, the mission returned home in 1939. Unofficially, or allegedly, they created a secret base in what they declared as New Swabia, which the Swabenland was the name of the boat. So they called the land New Swabia. Yeah. And they created an underground base called Secret Base 211. And it was near a geothermal lake underneath the surface.
210 other secret bases.
I don't know how they get these numbers for things. I was thinking about that, but it's not possible. Maybe it's like a code name or whatever. It's like, I don't know, like 911. I don't know.
What happens if they have 211 other secret bases?
Or Hitler's favorite number was like 211.
Yeah.
So, and this secret base underground was like the jumping off point for finding Atlantis, or like the ties to the original Aryan race, and to like exchange lost technology with the Atlanteans. I don't know.
Nazis always are looking to get a leg up.
They are. This was all like conjecture or whatever.
They didn't do well. They didn't get a leg up.
No.
Still beat them.
No, they didn't. But so they returned home in 1939, and I don't think that they really actually had any presence in Antarctica during the war. I don't think they were prepared for it. It was not on the front that they were. Yeah, like that was adjacent to like where they were fighting and needed to fight. It was not their home turf.
Argentina was already okay with moving them in, so they didn't want to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's like the cover story to hide another cover story sort of thing. Is that it's easy to deflect away from the Nazis were able to escape. If you tie on this Antarctica part to it, then you kind of like also discredit the Argentina part.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Argentina like history of things, that there are good accounts of settlements and towns in Argentina where they're like German descendants.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is really interesting.
That's true.
So like even if Hitler was not necessarily one of the ones that escaped, like there were probably some of the high officials who were not taken up by Operation Paperclip, which we and the Russians both contributed, or were like in a race for the top Nazi scientists at the time. I'm reading a book about that right now.
That sounds exciting.
It is. So we don't necessarily think that the base 211 existed and like the stuff with like the Atlanteans and the technology, but America had a strange response to the possibility of this, though.
They do.
Yes, which makes you think that something might have been going on in Antarctica that we weren't told the truth about. And this is called Operation High Jump. Have you heard about this?
I have not. This definitely makes me think, like, what is the treaty really about?
Right, exactly. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, I got to before I tell you about Operation High Jump, because this is the most interesting story I think that I found. Okay, so in, I want to say 1946, 47, so this is after the war that ended in 1945, where we dropped the bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We mounted the largest ever military operation to Antarctica. This is Operation High Jump. It was over the winter of 1946 to 1947, and it included 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft. These included one aircraft carrier, 2 seaplane carriers, 2 destroyers, 2 escort ships, 2 fueling ships, and 1 submarine. And officially, this was all a big exercise to see how our military operated in like super cold conditions.
Interesting. Yeah.
Why would we send all of these people in this like massive operation to the South Pole when the North Pole is a lot closer and we're allies with Canada?
Yeah, they don't care that we do anything.
Right. So like, why wouldn't we just do it there?
Fighting the ice giants in South Pole.
Who knows? But what we do know is that the operation ended early. After only 8 weeks, they all like returned back to America.
That's weird.
So they cut it short. It was supposed to last a lot longer. For some reason, they stopped it. And this all centered around this guy named Admiral Richard Byrd.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the most decorated admiral in the history of the Navy. He was the only person to ever have 3 ticker tape parades in his honor.
Weird.
And
weird.
So and he also was the first person to fly over the North Pole, and I think he was the first person, and he wanted to be the first person to fly over the South Pole, and I think that he hadn't done it at this time in 1946. So he's in charge of the Operation High Jump, like him and a couple other guys, and so we have an interesting account of what happens to him when he's on one of his missions during this operation, and it says that there were 3 hours where he was unable to make radio contact back with his base.
Yeah.
And they weren't sure what happened to him during these 3 hours. But after the operation was over, he gave this interview to a Chilean newspaper because I guess on his way back, he like stopped at Chile because it was like one of the places on the way there. Or he thought it was like Chili's, the restaurant, and he was like, "I'm just gonna like stop here real quick," but it was actually a whole country.
Quick, but it was a whole country. You had to like hang out for a little while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and they were just asking him questions, and it like turned out to be an interview with like one of their like biggest newspapers or something. And so he talked about there being like the threat of technology that could fly like from pole to pole, and like the possibility of weapons being launched from the North and the South poles. And I think through kind of translation that his story like got a little bit skewed to like be sensationalized.
Yeah, of course.
And but what we do know is that when he got back to America, that his like higher ups, like the Joint Chiefs of Staff or whatever, took him aside and were like, "Why did you talk to this Chilean newspaper about this like classified operation that we did in Antarctica? And we're gonna make you like do your non-disclosure agreement thing." And like from that time on, he never talked about what happened during Operation High Jump ever again.
Weird.
And
so they obviously had something they didn't want him saying. Right.
But apparently, let's see, I want to say at Ohio State University or something, they were, I don't know if they were doing an exhibit or commemorating something in his honor there because he like maybe attended there or something, but they were opening like a library or something of his files and things that he had, and they allegedly found his diary amongst.
I love when we find diaries.
Me too. I love when we find diaries and we find passports that were mysteriously fallen on the ground after 9/11 that weren't burned at all, but that's a different podcast. So they find his diary. And in his diary, it talks about what happened during the 3 hours that he was unable to make radio contact. And it said that when he was flying over the South Pole, that he saw this like lush green forested area that was like an oasis, and it had like a river running through it. And he like flew the plane into it. It was not just him on the plane; like he was like the admiral, but he had a pilot and like a crew and stuff. And that they flew into this like cavern type thing where they were like just following the terrain, and that it opened up into this larger interior that was ambient lit and that had like wildlife growing, and that there were like structures that were built there, and that it was kind of like in Star Wars.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking Star Wars.
You know when they go into Cloud City and those like other little ships kind of like escort the Millennium Falcon like down to the landing pad, that there were other crafts there, like flying saucer type crafts that talked to him on the radio, and they took like remote control over his airplane, and they like landed it in this civilized area, this like urban area that had structures, and that he allegedly met with this non-human entity called the Master, or that he called the Master. And it like warned him about humanity's.
For a minute there, I thought you were still talking about
Star Wars.
I was like, wait, what?
This sounds a lot like that.
Yeah, it does. That sounds like very much like Star Wars.
And the Master like warned him and talked about how since that he had influence over like the population in America, that he could warn them of the dangers of using nuclear technology, and how we had like opened Pandora's box with like the atomic bomb.
Absolutely.
It's always the same story with these other entities. Is the dangers of nuclear technology. But apparently after that they let him go back and they regained control of the ship over to him. Oh, and he said that there was a swastika that was on the flag of one of the like the ships that was in this area that he was, and so eventually he was able to come back and he was able to regain radio contact with his with the superiors of the base, and that was what happened to him while he was gone during these 3 hours. And then he tells the Chilean newspaper like something kind of like cryptic about this, and it gets all blown out of proportion until they allegedly find his diary like decades later.
Of course. So,
what do we think about this? I don't know. I think that the diary was a forgery.
Yeah,
and that if you like look at how it's written, that it's not written from the perspective of someone who'd be writing a diary like for their own personal use later on. It's written more like a science fiction sort of Lovecraft narrative. Yes, exactly. And
Lovecraft get into this.
Yeah, and I think some people did like some found some similarities between this and a specific science fiction that had been written like not too long before this.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these legends like a little bit repeated.
Yeah, exactly. They're just like urban legends that have gotten copy pasted, and you don't know where they originate from.
Yeah, that's just the truth of the nature of the kind of like legend this is.
So like the official story does end with him he does have those 3 hours of radio silence, and the mission does end early when it was supposed to last a lot longer. But did he go into a hollow earth where there were these other beings and that were Nazi sympathizers and warned him to not use nukes in the future? I don't know about that. I do like the story though.
Yeah, the story is fun. The story is really, really interesting. Well, and like that's kind of like Antarctica as a whole really lets you just kind of wonder, doesn't it? It's a blank space. It's a canvas.
It is. Good point.
More so than like North America, the northern frozen lands have so much to tell us. Antarctica has a lot that's holding away from us.
And there's not a landmass like there is at the bottom of the world.
Yeah. And so here we are.
It is mysterious that we did launch the largest operation ever to go down there for what was essentially like an exercise.
I know, but that's probably because it wasn't, right?
Right, exactly.
We don't do. I mean, government.
Do we just like water it down and say that there might have been some Nazis who escaped there and they had like a little outpost or whatever, and they were going to fight to the death because they had nothing to lose, and they would not, if there was like a trial or whatever, and they went to trial, they were going to die. So it's basically like you corner your enemies, you give them no way out, they're going to fight, so we're going to send enough to eliminate them. That's what we did, and then we turned around and came home when it was done. I could see that happening, maybe, but going into the hollow earth and like this sort of stuff, I don't know.
Hollow earth, interesting.
While it's a cool story, I don't think that there's any like modern scientific evidence to support it.
Yeah, well, and then it seems like when people decide those kind of things, they've really.
Like the flat earth people.
Against everything. They tend to commit to it, with the occasional person to be like, hey, maybe I was wrong about this. Because they make it sound good, and then people commit to it.
And it's really hard to admit that you're wrong, because we can't all be like Shackleton and say, we're not going to be able to make it, we should turn around.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes bravery to
I'm thinking
see that.
How would we even grade these legends? What was your favorite?
Of these things?
Yeah.
I want to say, oh man, my favorite story, not thinking about the possibility of it being real or not.
Yeah. I
like the alien base with the long hallway and the hieroglyphic writing and stuff like that.
That's cool. That one's cool.
I like that one.
I'm still trying to figure out what would have frozen people instantly like that. If that's a thing.
I like that one too.
That feels like almost like a magic or some creature more than it feels like just unfortunate luck.
I want to talk about that in a second, because that might go with my theory that I want to tell you in a second. My other favorite would be the murder of that guy that was
that was interesting.
Stuck with the methanol, because that was weird.
Yeah, super weird.
Yeah. It's not supernatural or anything. It's just like, what were the motives behind it? And
what's he doing?
But the flash frozen thing. Okay, are you ready for my theory?
I'm ready for the full Matthew theory.
The full theory.
Matthew
Okay.
theory.
So going back to the book of the Fingerprints of the Gods, that Graham Hancock talks about the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, and this is where I'm going to get the dates wrong, but it's about 12,000 years ago. We talked about this in the Atlantis episode. I've talked to you about this before. Is that okay? So the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis that Graham Hancock talks about, and through us talking about how Antarctica before was the temperate rainforest.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I think that happened. Is remember the gravity anomaly that I talked about that was caused by the void that was underneath the ice? What if the void was caused by the impact crater of like a comet or something hitting the Earth at that specific point? Because a comet, what is a comet made out of? Mostly ice and rock.
Yeah.
And if it was made out of ice and it melted, then you wouldn't see big evidence of it. It might cause a void to occur.
Yeah, almost a void would just it would just disappear.
Exactly. And if we go back to the Charles Hapgood theory about the crust displacement, and it hit when Antarctica was not at the South Pole, it hit the spot where the void ends up being and caused the whole crust to shift by 7 degrees into the polar zone at the bottom.
Yeah.
And that's what caused the flash freezing that possibly happened, not to this crew necessarily, but to like wildlife and plants and stuff like that.
Suddenly become
cold. So then you have the ice age that is happening.
Yeah.
And then I want to say it's like 1,000 years or so more. You have the comet is on a cycle, because the comets go in like a cycle in their space or whatever. Part of the comet is coming back and it hits the ice sheet that has now formed in North America, because you have the ice age that formed from all of the water vapor being cast into the air and blocking out the sun, that it caused the global sea levels to rise everywhere. And then that causes the end of the ice age there. And then when all that's said and done, Antarctica is at the bottom and it's frozen over. And we have the void.
I see what you mean.
Someone else could have put it more articulately than me, but the thing was that I tied the void to the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis that no one else had done before. So anyway, that's what I think might have happened.
That's an interesting, space to think about. Like, how does this stuff happen? Of course, I'm still so very curious on like that very moment that something might freeze. I mean, obviously, that.
What if it was like a blizzard, or I don't know. What if you had like the coinciding of like a blizzard but a tidal wave at the same time, like a rogue wave? I don't know.
Yeah.
You think there'd be more damage to the ship then, though?
Yeah, it's just and it's just one of those interesting things of like how do is it even true? If it is true, then like that's a pretty weird story. There's so much to Antarctica.
There's too much.
Too much. We won't do a continent.
No more continents. God, who suggested this one? Write it out in the comments down below.
Whoever did this, he did us a number.
But I think we gave it a good try. I found every story on Antarctica I could possibly find.
Yeah, and some.
Yeah.
Right. What is, again? I think your theory is fun. What do you think? What do you think was the best part of Antarctica, and how shall we rate Antarctica? Because it's quite big.
I don't know if it's fair to like rate Antarctica against the same way that we've been rating the other myths and legends. But if we were to like all encompassing, the thing about you said about being a blank slate is Antarctica's mass appeal, because it's like anything can happen.
Yeah.
We didn't even get into like stuff that you know is not real, but it's like, it's a movie or whatever.
Yeah, because there's so much of it. There's so many things that are not even real we
didn't even talk about the pyramid.
Which I've heard about multiple times.
Yeah, it's one of those like Google Earth things, but it looks like a pyramid.
It does.
Yes. It's 2 kilometers long on each side, though. It's massive.
Yeah, and what happens if there's a pyramid there? Does that change perspective of like what we're thinking?
Does it give credence to the theory that there were civilizations there before when Antarctica was not there. Yeah.
Yeah. Antarctica, though, I think I'm gonna say it was too big.
Me too.
It was too big for
a rating.
Yeah, for a regular rating. I'm gonna give it.
But I liked Antarctica.
Yeah,
I thought it was
fun.
cool. Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a proper 7.
Okay. I was gonna say 9, so let's give it an 8.
Okay. Legends and Libations gives it
Official store.
Yeah,
Official score of Antarctica is you get an 8.
Yeah. Too big though.
Yes.
Too big, and
we will narrow the focus.
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah, we're narrowing hard next time.
Yeah, exactly.
The drink, how we feeling? How we gonna vote?
I give it a 5.
Yeah, 5, 6.
Yeah.
5.5.
5.5.
5.5. Not bad, not great.
Not bad, not great. But if it's the only thing you can get, then I'm not complaining.
And if you have a lot of friends with a lot of different eclectic tastes,
then you have yourselves a banquet.
Yeah, have yourself a banquet. Guys, welcome.
We will be back.
Yeah, welcome back to Legends and Libations.
Thank you for staying tuned through season 2.
Yeah. Oh my God, we probably have gone a god amount of time.
We'll
cut legendary amount of time.
Exactly. First episode, special episode. Yeah. We're gonna cut it down from here.
Yeah. So stick with us. We'll see you guys in a few weeks. It was absolutely wonderful, and
thank you for joining us. Yeah. We appreciate it.
Keep drinking
and tell your friends about us.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.